Picture this. You have a long commute to work and just want to listen to a good podcast, but there are too many choices. Anime, film, comic books, science. What will you do? Well, never fear. We are here with all of your podcast needs. Welcome, all freaks and geeks. We are the Square Roundtable Podcast, a collective of Black nerds discussing all things anime, comics, science, and pop culture related. Please join us for our weekly podcast every Friday on squareroundtablepod.fandomlim.com, YouTube, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Be there and be square.
After writing a John Carpenter-directed sci-fi comedy called Dark Star, Dan O'Bannon, a young recent USC graduate, decided that he now wanted to write the horror version of that script, a monster movie where the monster looked real. Impressed by Dark Star, writer and friend of O'Bannon's Ronald Shusett contacted O'Bannon to seek out a potential collaboration. Putting aside his script that would ultimately become Total Recall years later, Shusett and O'Bannon agreed to work together on O'Bannon's monster movie in space script, which was then called Star Beast. They knew that the movie was going to be set on a spaceship with a small crew and that they would be awakened from cryosleep to investigate a distress beacon on an alien planet. But what they didn't know at the time was how the monster was going to look and ultimately what the threat of the movie would be. O'Bannon was hired to work on director Alejandro Jodorowsky's Dune project in Paris for 6 months. That movie ultimately fell through, but during his time there, O'Bannon was introduced to the works of a Swiss artist by the name of H.R. Giger, whose depictions of biomechanical monsters left an impression on him. He knew then that Giger should design the look of the Star Beast. After almost selling their script to Roger Corman's company, O'Bannon and Shusett were introduced to David Giler and Walter Hill's company, Brandywine Productions. They had a deal with 20th Century Fox at the time and agreed to buy and produce the script. They hired a young director by the name of Ridley Scott, who at the time had just directed his successful debut film, The Duelists. They agreed that Scott's emphasis on horror over fantasy would be perfect for Star Beast, which was eventually retitled as simply Alien. The movie was released in June of 1979 and was a massive commercial success. Considered by many to be a haunted house story in space, Alien made many best-of lists and even today is considered a classic piece of horror and science fiction. It was praised for its casting of older character actors instead of young, good-looking up-and-comers, its production design, and for the look of the alien itself, whose phallic head, lack of eyes, and small inner tongue mouth have etched it into the pop culture zeitgeist as one of the most unique and frightening creatures ever put on film. Alien went on to solidify the careers of Sigourney Weaver and director Ridley Scott, who went on to make such classics as Blade Runner, Gladiator, and The Martian. Alien spawned several sequels and spin-offs as other movie series, comic books, video games, and even an upcoming TV show on FX. But what did we think of this movie? Join me, Matt McGregor, along with my co-hosts Harris McCabe and Colin Shaw, as we focus on the initial 4 movies in the original Alien series of films. So wake up from your cryo chamber, stuff that 70s bush into your skivvies, and prepare yourself, because in space, no one can hear you scream. We watched the first movie in the Alien franchise of films. This is 1979's Ridley Scott classic, Alien. This is a show about franchises. Science fiction franchises. You're listening to License to Watch.
Why in the world was this movie made?
All right, Colin is done eating.
Catch the crumpling of the fast food bag.
Yeah, here we go. Dead silence.
Not just any fast food. Not just any fast food. Fast food from the Pizza Wagon of Brooklyn on Ventura Boulevard.
We should get them as a sponsor.
Sponsored by this episode of License to Watch is sponsored by the Pizza Wagon of Brooklyn on Ventura Boulevard.
If you ain't riding the wagon, you gonna crash.
They also have calzones.
That's how it ends.
Yeah.
Possibly salads. I don't know. My eyes haven't drifted that far over to the menu.
I think for our first commercial, that went really well.
Yeah. Unlike our commercials for this show.
Now if we could just get somebody to pay us for that.
Yeah.
From now on, I want all our advertisers to actually be sponsors of the show. That's my new rule.
All right. So let me get this thing started here.
Oh yeah, let's watch the movie.
Yeah.
It's got the old 20th Century Fox beginning.
Yeah, I like that.
The sound is more aggressive, I felt like.
Mm-hmm.
This is the... This is conducted by a live orchestra. They're like on call every time you push play. They're just like sitting in a studio somewhere. Someone push play. We have to play this movie live.
I actually met that guy. Are we on right now?
We're on, yeah.
Oh, damn. The Ronald Schutzit, or whatever that guy's name is.
Ronald Schutzit?
Schutzit? What about Tom Skeets alive?
I've not met him.
Have you ever met Sigourney Weaver?
Sigourney Weaver.
How about Veronica Cartwer?
That one's hard to not say correctly.
Yeah.
Harry Dan Stanton.
Oh, that wasn't even close to a bad pronunciation of that. John Hurt. I got that one. Nailed it. In case people aren't sure what we're talking about, Ian Holm, you should know by the cast that we are talking about Alien.
Lord of the Rings. Oh.
And Yaphet Kotto as Mr. Big.
It's a badass name right there.
Yeah. A lot of these guys just died recently.
Thank God.
They're dropping like flies.
They're a bad man.
Yeah. Parslow's been trying to kill him for years. Finally got the best of Yaphet Kotto. We had to wait till the man was like 80, but he got him.
One day.
He's been trying to kill him with his bare hands. They've had so many wrestling matches where Yaphet has just whooped his ass.
I think that would make for a good like boxing promo poster, like Yaphet versus Parslow, and like each of their profiles with like a
Kotto versus Parslow. I feel like Ryan.
Kotto versus Parslow. That makes more sense.
Yaphet Kotto's in a hospital bed.
On
the fight poster, he's like, he just keeps coming back.
So I thought this whole joking was not so grounded as that, and then now you take it back.
No, it really is. It
and
really
you
is.
Make it more realistic.
I'm just picturing him fighting an old man.
The Family Guy skit, the recurring one where Peter fights the chicken, that was based off of me and Yaphet Kotto's basically life together.
They stole your life story, and you didn't get a dime for it.
Yeah, they turned him into the chicken.
Yeah, I was gonna ask which one's the chicken.
Yaphet.
Yeah.
All right, welcome to the show. This is License to Watch, and we are all here once again, starting a brand new franchise. We wrapped up Jaws recently, and now we're moving into a bit of the same like thriller category, but albeit a bit scarier, I think.
Much scarier.
Yeah, so
and much more science fiction.
Definitely more science fiction, although it's arguable that shark was a robot the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
Or a ghost, or a mutant, or
Kevin Bacon from Footloose. We covered this in the Jaws podcast, guys. Can we get with the current movie?
First up, so we're doing the Alien series, and we're sticking to just the 4 original. We're not doing AVP, and we're not going to be covering any of the Prometheus films. I feel like those, while they are an offshoot of this franchise, will probably cover them, especially if Ridley Scott goes and makes a 3rd movie to like finish off the trilogy there. We'll probably go and cover those as their own
They're like
series
separate
at some point.
but related franchises.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll talk about them and bring them up, but for now we're just going to focus on 1979's original Ridley Scott classic, Alien. Original title was Star Beast.
Star Beast. 2 words.
It's clearly a better title.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have any of you guys ever actually read that script?
I actually heard a great story about it from a producer I used to work for.
Well, this is the right podcast to tell that story.
Well, hold up. That voice you hear is our special guest for this episode, Mr. Alex Parslow, friend of the pod, former USC colleague,
former roommate of many of the pod.
Former lover.
Our guest caliber is waning. We're just like grabbing people
Current
off
arch
the street.
nemesis.
We're handing out microphones to people walking down the street. Like,
hey, we used to live together for like a month before you
literally
transferred.
is on the podcast tonight because he's the proximity with which he lives to Matt's house. Who's close?
Well, anyway, thanks for doing this, Alex.
Glad to be here, Matt.
What have you been? What are you at liberty to say that you do for a living, or that you you have up your sleeve these days?
Well, I'm happily unemployed.
Ah,
No, I'm kidding. I work in film, and
vague.
yeah, I work in art. I'm an artist.
I'd say I'm a blue collar guy.
No, I work in the development side of film production, and so I work with writers and producers to try to get screenplays, top notch, ready for directors, and to attach financing and other producers, and try to get them into production. And I went to school with a couple of guys here, film school at USC.
Nice.
So tell us about Star Beast.
Oh yeah, you had a story.
So I worked for someone who
I worked for a Star Beast.
You know what's sorry? You know what's weird about Star Beast is how similar it sounds to Arby's.
Star Beast.
They
We
were-
have the meats.
We have the beast.
taste the beast. They were trying to find branding opportunities. They were like, if we just make it sound like Arby's, then people will think of the sandwich subconsciously, and they'll go get one after the movie.
Maybe the corporation that's like in control of this whole mission that needs a sample of the alien or whatever is what Arby's will become. Like,
Yes.
Arby's will eventually acquire more and more franchise restaurants.
It merges with the Wayland Corporation, which is purchased by the Utani Corporation, and Arby's is just Wayland. It's all just a fast food. The entire franchise is all about fast food marketing.
The lore of this series is mixed with the lore of like Demolition Man, where like all restaurants are owned by fast food companies.
Yeah.
They're like the Taco Bell rival.
There's a cut scene right before the alien explodes out of his stomach where they say they should have had Arby's instead.
The final phase of the Star Beast that we've never seen happen in any of the movies is that it turns into a giant roast beef sandwich.
If you look closely,
in
you
the
can see they're
future.
eating Arby's in most of the scenes.
That's why it's drooling all the time. It's like just hungering.
It wants
over-
Arby's.
Yeah.
In the future, when there is no more actual beef and everything's like got to be composited like they do at Subway, that's what roast beef becomes. Is like, this is the only alien creature that's got a similar.
Maybe that's why they need
Texture.
it. They need the meat.
Yeah, they need the meat.
They need a new source of
They
meat.
don't have the beef anymore. They're like, oh my god, the slogan doesn't make any sense.
Maybe that acid blood turns like directly to flavor as soon as you roast it.
It's actually
We have
mustard.
The beast.
It's
actually mustard.
They use that to cook the beef. That's why it's hot.
Yeah.
That's what they dip it in. Like that's like the oil. Or...
All right.
I did not think we would go this far.
I know. We really got carried. Colin thought he was just doing a one-off thing, and it turned into.
So
a whole
sorry, we
deal.
interrupted Alex. You used to work for a Star Beast.
Yes, tell us about the Star Beast.
It was tough. No, I worked for a producer who told me a story. Matt, remind me, who's the co-writer, co-producer of the first couple movies? The famous director of 48 Hours?
Oh, Walter
Harris.
Hill.
Walter Hill. So
Yeah.
Walter Hill, the name of the other filmmakers involved escaped me, but one of the producers.
It's mostly. We might as well just answer the question. It's mostly Walter Hill and David Giler, who are both writer-directors. Walter Hill pretty much invented the action movie in the 80s, as we know it in modern day. And they had taken a script by Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett.
I don't remember how to pronounce his name, but those two guys had written the original draft, and then the other producer that you mentioned, I believe, read it and didn't like it that much until a certain point in the story, and that point was about that point in time was like 2/3 through the movie, and then he sent the script over to Walter Hill and said, "Hey, read this screenplay. It's got this. It gets awesome. Trust me." And he read like the first half, and he called him back and said, like, this isn't that great. Like, he's like, no, just keep going. And then he read to that point in the story, and that point in the story was when the alien bursts out of the guy's stomach. And
I don't remember that part. Was that? It's very forgettable.
And at that point, it was like way further into the movie, and they're like, "Whoa, we've never seen that before. That is amazing. That is awesome." And so that's what made them take on the screenplay, was they both had never heard or seen anything like that. And of course, they rewrote it. It takes place much earlier in the movie, but that was also. I remember my parents saw this when it just had come out in theaters, and they said that when that scene came on, like the theater like gasped and was like, it was shocking, and people literally walked out of the theater.
It's one of the most iconic, and it's one of the scariest moments in any movie, and it's a credit to David Giler and Walter Hill, two professionals who made a lot of great films, that they recognized immediately that this is the iconic moment. This is something we can build a movie around.
I don't know about you guys, but it makes me sad to think that I no longer live in a world where like we can be shocked by anything.
Yeah.
Like I don't know about you guys, but I just watched the new Suicide Squad movie on HBO Max, and like it is so. I mean, it was great. I loved it, but it's super violent. Like people's faces get ripped off, and like they show it, and like
like main characters too. They're killing off main characters left and right, kind of. But
yeah,
everyone in the movie is kind of susceptible to that, except for Harley Quinn. So
yeah, but that's sort of like the gimmick of the movie is like they're it's supposed to be like gory to the point of like you laugh at it. I don't know how to describe that, but yeah, I mean, there's like I think I had this conversation with Colleen recently, where I was like, when was the last time you were actually shocked in a movie?
What's Hereditary? When the little girl's face, the head, when they cut back to that I remember everyone in the theater, like the people who didn't walk out definitely gasped.
Yeah, but that wasn't anything. That was just gratuitous.
It was a memorable moment, but I hear what you're saying. Like
Right.
it feels like it's hard to like one up everything that's come before. Like you hear stories about The Exorcist and how people like vomited, walked out of the theater. Like it had just
Shit
like
their pants all
it
at the
had
same time.
yeah it had taken things to a new level that nobody had seen before. It's hard to imagine there being like a zeitgeisty moment in cinema again.
In
like
my
that.
life, the only thing I could think of off the top of my head is I saw The Sixth Sense like the weekend that it opened, possibly opening night, to a packed movie theater. And I remember I went with a bunch of friends, and like we're all watching the movie, and then the reveal happens at the end, and I just remember hearing like an audible gasp from everyone in the audience. Like no one saw it coming. It was just like, oh my God, this is a moment,
Yeah.
And yeah, that's it. That's all I can think
This
of.
isn't really. This isn't what we're talking about. But the only thing that I can think of that is sort of on the same level is like just a few years ago, maybe 5 years ago, I saw at the Egyptian. They had a screening of a couple of Michael Haneke films, Benny's Video and Cachet. And so this is, for those of you who don't know, a German art house director.
Yeah. I'm one of those.
Yeah. So he did like Funny Games and the remake of Funny Games. And he's sort of a interesting, like kind of a provocateur, but he's a very interesting, ambitious filmmaker. But definitely not what we're talking about. But in the movie Cachet, there's a point in like the third act where something truly, truly shocking comes out of nowhere. And I was I'd seen it before, so I was aware of what this was. I was going there because I love the movie. Came out in like 2001 or something. But apparently, like the 300 other people in the theater were not aware of this. So it's like this quiet drama, and then all of a sudden something happens, and I've never heard 300 people simultaneously gasp and then remain completely silent for like 5 minutes. It was bizarre, and it was very fulfilling. It was an enjoyable movie to watch with a huge audience, which I never would have suspected, having seen it alone several times.
Not since Harris had dropped his pants at a Little League game had he heard an audible gasp.
You know what I hate is when you go into the movie
then it's
theater.
not the silence; it's all applause.
Yeah, you know what I hate is when you go into a movie theater and you go in right before the movie starts and the theater's already full, and you just walk in and everyone gasps at you.
I get that one. I think the only other comparable moment I can think of in cinema is when Ben Stiller zipped up his penis and There's Something About Mary.
Totally.
That might have been the most horrifying moment of all of modern cinema.
That was the last time something
That shot when
happened.
they actually show it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, nothing affects me. No react.
I have no emotions.
Yeah.
I'm
No,
dead
this is way
inside.
off topic, but
Movies, please.
We're gonna
me.
bring up something way off topic.
You guys got any spare change?
me and my friend were doing like a deep dive into some YouTube videos, and we stumbled upon the concept of the Sigma male. Have you guys heard of it?
I just heard of this.
No, but please enlighten me because I am curious.
The Sigma male is sort of like the alpha male, but like alpha and beta male are their own thing. The Sigma male is like outside of that, but also better. So like, we watched this one video, and they were like, well, the female essence is actually like a reactive essence. The female reacts to things. And like the dude is using the word females a lot in a way that like makes it obvious that like someone who says female like that a lot might be kind of sexist. But he's like, yeah. So like to be a Sigma male, you can't react to anything. You've got to hold your frame. And he literally says the word frame every 10 seconds. He's like, my dog was barking at me and I couldn't understand why. And I realized he was testing my frame. The dog needed me to hold my frame. And it's like so vague. And he's just talking about how you can't react to anything at all. So like basically like I guess like ideally to be the ultimate Sigma male, you're like fully catatonic. You just
it's a weird this is the thing that I think we don't. It's totally off topic, but like that
Is
exists
there such a
only
thing in
only
this
to
podcast?
sell
I don't know.
to convince men who feel like they need something more to be
Right.
like better than other men, and it's just a selling marketing thing.
Yeah.
This doesn't exist.
They come
This
up
is
with new names
made up.
for
You
like,
know.
and if it's the obviously
They're-
a lot of circles the pickup artist
Yeah,
It's not just about
universe.
pickup.
But
I don't
yeah,
think.
you're
but,
right.
but
You're right.
it's-
No,
it's
I
a-
think it circles that universe because it's all
Yeah.
about exploiting male inadequacy.
Yes, and
Yes.
it's like, well, if what's beyond an alpha male? Somebody had to make up something even more,
Right.
in a
Yes,
way. And so it's like
obviously,
they made up
like-
this new thing, and now they're trying to convince you that you're not enough.
Yeah.
And so you've got to like pay for their videos or their book or
And
their
the irony
online
is
courses
that
or whatever.
anybody who buys this shit is like just. I mean, you might as well just put a sign on your back that says
beta. No, I'm kidding.
kick me, kick me, I'm a cuck or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's like, but it really is like just it's all just like marketed towards people who feel inadequate, and it's really sad that this is something that so many people feel like they need to do
Or gullible
just
to think that this is what's going to give them the edge
Right.
in
Right.
life, in career, women, whatever. You know.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
like this is kind of what we were saying. Like my friend's girlfriend, she was there and we were talking about the Sigma male thing, and she was like, you know, like kind of like asking like why it was funny to you or what do you think about like the guys who are really into it. And I'm just like, you know, like I don't really want to waste any more time and energy like trying to figure out what kind of masculinity I am or what kind of masculinity I need. I just kind of want to fucking be myself, you know.
I just would like to. I would just like to point out that this is all really, really heavy beta talk. Yeah. So,
We should watch one of these videos.
Yeah, no, I need
I'm
to
sorry,
watch a
guys.
video.
I'll go in on it with you. We could all
Yeah.
pool our resources.
Everybody put in $5, guys. We need
We're
to.
gonna be so butch.
Yep. Anyways, the alien Sigma male for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wait, so did we ever get your story? Did you say it already?
I just talked about how like the thing that made that script go was that,
that scene.
even though it was a mediocre script, it was this one basically event in the story that like the producers had read and like, wow, like this is awesome. We can sell this. Let's go from here. Let's, you know, like it was, basically the way it was described to me is that they had never seen it before. And
Yeah.
sometimes I hear that, you know, in the industry where everyone's kind of looking for something they've never seen before because there's a million screenplays out there that are just slight variations of movies you've already seen a million times.
Yeah.
And when that alien came out of that stomach or whatever in the screenplay, they're like, okay, we've read, you know, 1,000 horror scripts. We've never seen this.
Well, have any of you guys ever seen Dark Star, the John Carpenter movie? That
Yeah,
Dan
a long
O'Bannon
time
wrote?
ago.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it, but I was reading, you know, doing my research about this movie, and so apparently Dan O'Bannon and John Carpenter went to USC together, and Dan O'Bannon had this script that was basically Alien, but like more comedic. So that's what Dark Star is, and they made that, and it wasn't really anything, and it inspired him to like write something similar, but like more scary. And he met this guy, Ron Shusett, and he was working on what inevitably would become Total Recall, which is the next movie that they wrote together. And they came together and they read each other's scripts, and they were like, we each have, you know, kind of good elements going on here. We should combine and try to make this into something. And I think like Dan O'Bannon's script was closer to Alien, and so they decided to like work on that one first and beef that up, and then later on they would come back to Ronald Shusett's script, and then that became Total Recall like 10 years later.
It was actually Shusett's idea to get the alien into the ship because he had been working on a script about a gremlin on a World War II plane.
Yeah.
And they liked the idea of, because I think at that point O'Bannon's script was just about a team of like basically long haul space truckers that stumble across an egg field in an alien place. And then Shusett was the one who was like, it'll be great if the alien gets on the ship, but they couldn't figure out how to do it. And then Shusett was the one who was like, what if the alien fucks a guy and then gets him pregnant with an alien baby, and that's how the alien gets on the ship? And they're like, oh my God, that's great. So that's basically, where that idea came from.
Yeah, and that inherently like breeds the idea of like, okay, well then it's just going to be a tiny alien. No, it has to like grow rapidly,
Right.
you know,
For no reason, with no matter to consume.
Yeah, exactly.
When you think about like the mythos behind this creature is so like cool and in depth and like thought. Like, how many creature features have you seen where it's, just some monster that doesn't have, or it has a very cliche backstory where it's like
basically just a costume, right? Like, yeah.
I mean, I was going to go into like the design is brilliant. The design was so original for its time. Obviously, Ridley Scott was a brilliant director, so like they got the right director.
Mm-hmm.
They had the right vision for the look of the movie. And they had a creature that it wasn't just the costume; it was the whole mythos behind the creature. It's so thoughtful of like and creative, how this creature works. When you talk about the egg fields and like
and
obviously
the space jockey that they see that's had a thing burst out of his chest, like just the
That
mythology,
the mystery, totally.
The mythology and the world building around the creature is really interesting,
And that's why it's lasted so long. I imagine part of the reason why it's lasted so long, because there's a million creature features and like. How many of them you don't remember or forget after just 5 years? But Alien has lived on, and they made a ton of movies, not nearly as good as this one, but go ahead.
This movie also came out in a time before like what movies are now, which is like everything has to be a cinematic universe and like everything has to be set up for the next thing. Like, they set up so much lore, and like there's the space jockey, there's the derelict ship that crashed. You don't know like where that came from. Like there's so many questions that this movie leaves you with, It doesn't explain what laid the eggs, which obviously we get later on. You can leave the theater in 1979 and be like, oh, that was awesome. But like, oh, where do you think the ship came from?
I would have been totally satisfied if we never found out any of the Prometheus specs. Like, I feel like that ruins it a little more.
It does.
I like the idea because you know what it is? The world seems like it could be ever expansive and it could be anything. It seems like we're just getting a little tiny peek into a little section of the world. And the more of the world I see, the more I'm like, yeah, I guess, but that's not as interesting as when I just was seeing this little like peak that had an illusion of much greater.
Yeah. It's also unclear in this movie to me if human beings are still the only like species.
Right? How
in
weird
existence.
is it to see aliens?
Yeah, right. Do they have aliens in this world? They never really say. Yeah, and then when they discover
they don't
this
seem very
thing,
alarmed when they're like, "Oh, there's an alien presence on this planet" or whatever. Or,
they're alarmed enough, but like. Not
mostly
to the
alarmed
point.
the thing is stuck on the guy's face.
They
They're
never
not
have a
alarmed that the thing
conversation
exists.
like, "Hey, we finally found intelligent
Right,
life."
exactly.
Right.
They don't have that conversation.
Yeah, my impression is that like there are things they've seen that are alien, but it's like maybe mostly plant life or microbes or whatever. Like very rarely is it like what we would classify as like an animal or something like that.
But again, it's not. I mean, it's not done in an unrealistic way. Like they're preoccupied with the horrors of like what's happening to their friend. So maybe and they're grunts. They're not like super highly intelligent like scientists or whatever.
There's like one science officer and everyone else is basically part of this trucking company.
Yeah, exactly. That's how it was pitched. I think back in the day is like this is truckers in space. These aren't. Like you said, maybe there's one or two people who are like on the scientific side, but mostly these are. I think they say in the beginning they're like a transportation.
Yeah.
I love that the majority of their conversations are like whether or not they're going to get paid
stuff.
to do this.
Yeah.
So
that's super interesting. Like to me, that's a super interesting part of the story is that we know like the big bad is the corporation because they're the ones giving the order to capture this thing when they know that like it will kill them
even
all.
Even if it means sacrificing the whole crew.
Right. But they really like don't have any idea because like whatever level they're at in the corporation is they're usually just like pushing rocks around. It's literally ore, like a million, like tens of millions of tons
20
of
million
ore.
tons of ore. It's funny because Dan O'Bannon actually said that one of the initial inspirations was the thing from Another World, which was the Howard Hawks movie that actually John Carpenter remade as The Thing. And that was basically the idea behind that was it was a bunch of guys who were, like blue collar workers in an Arctic environment. And it was like, hey, we're going to have these regular Joes confront this, kind of magic alien force. So he was sort of pursuing that same idea of like, hey, what if there's, space truckers and they get in over their head with some,
I also love that there's like a little bit of a stratification between like obviously Yaphet Kotto and Harry Dean Stanton are like not on the same. They're not on the same pay grade,
the
literally,
grunts,
and like it's very like clearly discussed in the script. And
Tom Skerritt is definitely like a company man as a captain. He feels like he's got to follow orders more than
And the science officer, it's like
is the plant,
right, yeah, and like he's very like he's actually kind of above all of them because he's like come direct from the higher ups.
Yep.
And Sigourney Weaver, she's competent and like really good at her job, and her job isn't just maintaining the ship and like moving the rocks around. It's like a command position. She's just not the leader.
One thing I really like about Sigourney Weaver, the way they wrote the movie, is that like in the first like third of this movie, she almost feels like the antagonizing force. She's the one who wants to keep the thing off the ship, which is the proper protocol, but that feels like a little inhumane. But she's actually right. She knows that like this is a threat to everyone, and this is the right thing to do. But it almost feels like the actor with the beard, what's his name again?
Tom Skerritt.
Tom Skerritt
Dallas.
is like the protagonist of this movie.
Yeah.
And they kill him halfway through. And in retrospect, you realize Sigourney Weaver was actually the protagonist of this entire movie.
What is so interesting about this film is that for most of it, you don't feel like you think you know who the protagonist is, but you don't really. It really is an ensemble, because who do you start off with? It's not Tom Skerritt that wakes up first. It's John Hurt. And we have this long shot of John Hurt waking up and yawning, and it's all the whole beginning of this movie, the first 6 minutes or something, are totally silent of these people waking up from a long slumber. And then you see them sort of bantering around as a group, and you get the idea that the world, that they are truckers, that they're grunts, that they're just trying to get a job done, and that and then they're a little put out by
Some
having
of them
to
want
do
their
this
bonus.
detour. Yeah, some of them want their bonus, and then Tom Skerritt sort of emerges as, of course, the handsome captain of the ship is going to be your protagonist, and he goes off on the adventure and whatever. And John Hurt, who maybe we thought early on might be one of our leads, ends up being the first guy who's attacked. But then he comes back and he's not dead, and we're like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense, because I didn't thought it was weird that he would die when he was the first guy we met. But then he does die, and then Tom Skerritt dies, and then all that's left is this woman who really has not had a very big part in the movie. She's only had a couple of incidents where she was basically, like you said, an antagonizing force.
She plays it so well, though. Like you get the impression that like she's really got her shit together, and it's not like she's like coming in there and acting like she knows more and like is smarter and better than them, but like it's still clear that like she at least knows as much as everyone else and like is trying to make good decisions and stuff like that. I think she's like a fantastic protagonist, and I think like the way what you're talking about, where you're not quite sure that you want to like lean into following her story.
It's not that so much. It's more like just that they don't pick a protagonist for more than half the movie. They just don't settle on one, which I think is daring and would probably
I feel like she's well disguised. I feel like in
Yes.
retrospect you can see how she is.
Right.
But I feel like it's just really, really sharp writing and
But
storytelling.
if we didn't know that Ripley was the hero of the Alien franchise, you would be pretty deep in this movie before you were like,
Yeah.
oh, she's going to be the one who wins.
Yeah. Totally.
She's a likable presence, though, despite her being sort of antagonistic in terms of like she's
You respect
antagonizing.
her. You still respect her.
you agree with
Yeah.
her. You understand where she's coming from. Yeah.
Yeah, she's really clear about like what her motivation is for saying and doing the things she's doing.
She's not trying to be cold or inhumane.
And
She's
all of
trying to
these
do it-
characters sort of have a point of view. It's well written in that regard.
Yeah,
But
and she's not like it's not stated earlier that she's the top of her field or
Right.
like they do today. Like the hero of everything is always like the best. I don't know.
And another thing, since we're kind of on the topic, is the casting. I always loved the casting of all these actors because they look like real people. As like today, I feel like Chris Hemsworth would be playing Yaphet Kotto's character, and Chris Pine and Chris Evans. All the Chris's would be in this movie, and then a supermodel would be playing Sigourney Weaver's role, and it would just be a bunch of beautiful people who are all in the like late 20s, early 30s, and it feels like they don't cast movies like this very often in this way. Go ahead.
I want to throw something out there for you guys, because I think this is interesting, because this is exactly, I think it's a great point that this would normally be actors in their 20s or 30s in a horror movie like this, and they went very much the other way. Can anyone guess who the oldest actor on this movie is?
Harry Dean or John Hurt probably.
It is Harry Dean Stanton at 53.
Yeah.
Can you guess who the youngest of all the men is?
Yafet?
The guy who plays Dallas.
It's actually John Hurt was only 39 when
What?
he did this.
Whoa.
And Tom Skerritt was 46. Actually, Ian Holm was 48, so he was Yaphet Kotto was the other young one, 42. And both the women were 29 and 30. So
Who's still alive? Tom Skerritt is still alive.
Tom Skerritt's still alive.
Sigourney Weaver, obviously.
I think
Veronica Cartwright.
Veronica Cartwright just died recently.
Did she?
I think. I could be wrong about that.
Oh man.
But yeah.
Were any of you guys? Because we just did Jaws.
She's still alive. She's 72.
There you go.
Because we just did Jaws. I was still thinking about our idea for a franchise protagonist video game, and definitely thinking about Sheriff Brody versus Sigourney Weaver, Ridley. Ripley. Sorry.
Ridley Scott.
Yeah, I know,
Ripley.
I know.
Yeah.
But Ripley would be a great video game protagonist. How in
Matt, are these street racers going to be going all night out
Yeah,
here? What is
I
going
hope
on with
so.
your
We're
neighborhood?
we're risking ourselves
right
here,
next to Fast
recording
and
with an
Furious
open
Drive.
window, and
Yeah.
there's like street racing motorcycles outside.
Yeah.
It's all part of the allure.
Wait, have you guys ever heard of the video game Broforce?
No.
I don't know if it's on Xbox, Matt, so you might be out in the cold, but it's on PlayStation 4, and it's basically like an 8-bit like shoot 'em up, or like maybe a 16-bit like shoot, but it's like old retro style. But it literally is exactly what you're talking about. It's like you start off, your first character is Rambo, and then the second character you pick up is either John Matrix from Commando or Dutch from Predator. It's hard to tell. But it's
What do you
clearly
mean?
Arnold.
Like they got the IP? Like they got
No,
the
they call him like
Butch, instead of
Rambro.
Dutch or okay.
Yeah, so it's all like it's got a bro in it, but like it's all. But then they've got like 30 of them, so you end up picking up like the Terminator. There's like multiple Schwarzeneggers in it.
Nice.
There's multiple Stallones. There's Ripley from Alien.
There is, yes.
and they all have like unique weapons. But
It's a fighting game.
no, it's like a shoot 'em up. It's basically kind of like Contra.
Dude,
Oh, okay.
you know the cover of Contra, right? They literally tried to make the two main characters look like Rambo. And
This game is
Commando.
just like taking Contra, but like very tongue in cheek, very over the top. Like you go into hell to fight Satan,
Nice.
but like every character has their own weapon and their own special that's like based on the thing. But the great thing about it is it's totally randomized. So you start off the game and you just have a random character. And then when you get to checkpoints, you're just switched to a different random character. And some of them, like there's a character that's like a MacGyver character.
Oh,
who's
hell
like,
yeah.
Who's like, putting M80s on bubblegum and stuff. And it just fucking sucks. But yeah, it's a very good game.
Well-
I recommend it. I was totally addicted for a day or
This is what I was gonna say. Is like when you pick the Sigourney Weaver character when she's fighting.
no
like,
Sheriff Brody, though. That's the bottom line for you.
The joke is that he was saying if there was like a Mortal Kombat style fighting game, but it was all like badass movie characters from the 80s and stuff. Like, what if Sheriff Brody was like one of the characters you could choose?
scared and sweaty
And
drinking
smoking.
coffee. And
I mean,
smoking.
Mortal Kombat is almost doing that. They have, you can play Terminator. You can
Yeah.
be. I mean,
The
all these-
Alien.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. What I want is, you know how in Marvel vs. Capcom you tag in somebody, but instead of like tagging in, it's just like Yaphet Kotto throws her a flamethrower to use, but then he immediately gets chomped by the alien on the way out, so you
Yeah.
get to see him get killed. Like if you use the flamethrower weapon, yeah,
You know that Alien was pitched as Jaws in space.
Yeah.
right?
yeah.
Yep.
And then Ridley Scott said he in his mind it was Chainsaw Massacre in space because he really wanted to lean into the horror things of it. But he hadn't seen Chainsaw Massacre until I think it was Dan O'Bannon. Is that what the guy's name is?
Yeah.
Yeah, Dan O'Bannon asked him to. So I was going to tell you guys because I have read Star Beast. And I almost reread it before we did this, but I didn't. And it's funny because it's not what this movie is really. It's interesting how much of this movie's like DNA was in there already. Starts off the same. Starts off like very quiet with the people waking up, and then it's just got a lot of like space trucking to build up to this moment when they land on the alien planet and find the eggs. And so like moving that up further in the script was a smart move. It's the characters are so like generic. It says at the beginning, like, they could all be men or women, doesn't really matter. They're all given random dumb names. None of them have any personality, really, that comes across in the script. The dialogue is all, like, most of it's, like, kind of overwritten and expositional. Most of it, I think, got cut or rewritten. But, like, the roots of this are there, and especially, like, you know, it was O'Bannon who worked with H.R. Geiger on Jodorowsky's Doom project. So when he was on Dune, he was working with Geiger and a couple of other artists, and, like, basically developed, like, what he wanted the look of this to be, and then insisted that they hire Geiger when he actually sold this. So it was like, it's funny because, like, he hated the draft that Walter Hill and David Giler rewrote, and thought that a lot of the things they had in there were terrible. Like, there was no android, that character didn't exist. So they added that. There was no, actually Ridley Scott was the one who had the alien come back on the escape pod, because originally the movie just ended with Ripley escaping and blowing it up on the rest of the ship.
Yeah, so she'll escape easily, and then we'll just, like, harp on her character for an additional 20 minutes.
She'll fly home, and it'll be nice.
Walk around in her underwear.
We'll see her in her underwear, though.
Yeah.
70s Bush, I like it.
So he didn't like a lot of those ideas. He didn't like a lot of the things they did. He seemed to be very resentful that he was getting cut out of the creative process. But credit where credit is due. Like, he had a lot of the original stuff, less just the script, but more like the greater idea of the world, the concept of blue-collar guys in this situation, and just the atmosphere of the thing. He was a guy who also did a lot of production design work on other stuff, which I think was what he was doing on Dune. So he had a very clear vision that really translated to the end product.
I think O'Bannon was visual, because I've seen Jodorowsky's Dune, the documentary, and I believe O'Bannon was supposed to be the visual effects person.
Yeah.
Because he tried to get the Star Wars guy or something, and, like, that meeting didn't go well, because Jodorowsky, like, is a little eccentric. So
yeah, and I read that they didn't want the android storyline in there at first, but later on, of course, in hindsight, it's, like, one of the cooler aspects of this movie, and it's, like, arguably, like, the part of the mythos that enables you to create sequels, and, like, it's the thing that sort of tethers it all together, you know. And in every movie now, we're always like, okay, who's the android, you know?
Yeah, it almost became a gimmick. They used it really well in the second movie to play against our expectations, but they do sort of go to that well over and over again.
I don't remember the one in the third one.
It's because it's not there.
It's not. Well, he is there, but he isn't really there.
At the very end. Yeah, the third one is one of the more interesting ones we'll talk about, yeah.
The not that we're talking about the sequel, but I would say, like, it's, you know, one of the greatest sequels in my opinion, because one of the problems with sequels oftentimes in Hollywood is they try to rehash what they did in the first movie. They just make it look different. You know, they just kind of change it on a surface level. Whereas Aliens, you know, they didn't just add more of the creature. They changed the genre.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, they changed it to an action horror thriller, whatever you want to call it, and really expanded on the mythos, added the queen. You know, like really added a lot to the mythology of Aliens, and that's what makes, you know, one of the things I love about the sequel. Which, by the way, another story. Supposedly, I don't know if this is a myth or not, but when they were looking for a director to direct the second Aliens, they brought in a number of directors. One of them was James Cameron, and supposedly when they brought in James Cameron to do his pitch, to kind of give his take on what he would do with the second Alien movie, he just walked into the room, he walked up to the whiteboard, and just without saying anything, just wrote the word alien, and then added an S at the end, and then drew 2 lines in the S, making a $sign, and then just smiled and shook his head.
Good pitch.
That's great. This movie, for me, is like, I love this movie so much because it is a movie that I don't think will ever, or like the style of this movie is rare. I don't know if it'll not ever get made again, but like, okay, so this movie's rated R. I wouldn't call it particularly violent, maybe for its time, just for that one scene where you see the little bit of like blood when it bursts out of him. Other than that, most of the kills happen off screen. Yeah. You don't really see anything, and you know, and they curse at each other. She says like, "Why don't you guys fuck off?" or whatever, you know. But it's not like blatant. It just feels real in the world. Like this is how these people talk, and they're not cursing just to get an R rating. You know, it's like they just wanted the movie to feel real.
all the creature and android stuff is so gross, though. It's so like there's something like really like texturally like real about it, and like it's like off-putting.
They had to cut a lot of stuff to get the R rating. There actually was like some of the kills where, especially the ones where the alien, the little mouth comes out and punches people in the chest. You can see that those are like some of the. Okay, so I'll start saying I love this movie. I have a couple of huge complaints with it, and one is that they do not shoot and cut the action well. For a lot of this, there's a lot of places where it's kind of incoherent. And one of them is whenever the alien, I think it's Harry Dean Stanton and Yaphet Kotto, both of those kills, you technically see stuff, but it's almost cut like they were having trouble pulling it off, which I don't think they were, because I believe both those deaths were actually cut out so they could get the R rating, because the ratings board had said there's too much gross shit in this. And if you have these two gory deaths, you can't get an R.
I'm curious about the woman's death, because there is a shot of the tail of the alien, sort of suggesting like that the tail is going to like.
No, what that is I think because I used to read the comic books. I was like super into this stuff as a kid, and like what the alien does is it puts its stinger, or whatever you want to call it, at the back of the tail behind you, so when you like kind of like around like the back of your neck, your head, whatever, so that you can't get away. So that it can kind of trap you in its.
Yeah,
but I agree with Colin. They only show it for her, so it does feel a little sexual.
Although, it seems like there's something really nasty that's cut right after that.
That's a coincidence, because that shot of the tail going around the leg was actually Harry Dean Stanton's legs. It was for it really was. It was for his kill scene, and they used it for hers instead, because they felt like she didn't have enough of a moment, because they didn't have anything to like build to with hers.
Interesting.
So, yeah,
I thought that was a joke.
I think Tom Skerritt, I think his kill was also shot and removed because it was too gory.
Yeah, that's
not positive, but I think I read that
because he's got one of the best where it's like you know what's going to happen, and you still jump when he turns around and it's right there in the tunnel. With him.
I feel like Harry Dean Stanton, the way he builds suspense in that scene, because it just goes on so long,
and the
lack of music
and water in that
room, and the sound effects.
Yeah,
you know, like you said, the chains and the water and the lack of. I feel like it was unconventional for its time, for how long it takes, for kind of like I think the lack of music.
Well, this movie's definitely slow burn. You know,
totally.
they were
but so successful.
I wanted to get into that.
It's never boring, in my opinion. It's like it's beautifully slow burn. It's successfully slow burn.
As a kid, I used to hate how slow this movie was. Like the first hour of it would bore me kind of, but as an adult I love it, and I want just more slow and boringness.
Well, what you were saying about like
slow and boring.
Yeah, I loved it. But what you were saying about how would they make this today? I don't think they would ever make this today. They would just cut it like they would just cut the beginning. They would cut it all up.
Alien Covenant is like the pure answer to like what you're asking. Like that's how Alien would be made today.
Yeah, this like the exact story, almost the exact script. It would just be like 90 minutes or less than 90 minutes. Probably.
And there's so much talking and exposition and everything, and it's like all tell, don't show. You know, whereas this is like we're just in this world. We see these people waking up. We're like, what the fuck's going on? They don't try to explain it. They're just like, you know, if you can keep up, we're gonna have a little bit of exposition here and there, but mostly it's just gonna be people alone on a ship getting fucking killed by aliens. Occasionally,
it's tough because you can never do something for the first time again. Like when this movie came out, everything from the design, the storytelling, the mythology around the creature, the horror. You know, nobody had really seen it. And by the time these other Alien movies come out, we've seen it like 8 times. Yeah. And we've seen it for 40 years.
This was, you know, this wasn't created in a vacuum. It was heavily influenced by, you know, the hip space movies of the time. There's some 2001 influence here with the pacing and some of the shots that, you know, the slow push-ins and stuff like that. There's also heavy Star Wars shit here because obviously this movie actually got greenlit. It was sort of, I wouldn't say it was floundering. It was a script that people were interested in, but everyone said it was too expensive. And then Star Wars happened, and they said, what space scripts do we have lying around? And this happened to be the top of 20th Century Fox's pile of space scripts. But, like, Star Wars was very famous for, you know, building lived-in sets where it was like the first space movie where everything wasn't clean and pretty in the future. Like, it was like, no, these are used cars. This is shit that's been around. Not everything is brand new. And this, they leaned into it even more, but they got very intentionally got the same guy who did the production design for Star Wars to build all these sets because they were like, we want the Star Wars thing.
Did this movie win anything? Any Academy Awards?
Yeah, I think it won special effects.
I would say the one kind of like mistake it makes of like that old movies do in terms of production design, specifically with future technology stuff, is like the mother computer is like a big giant computer, and like the classic thing for all older things is always that like, oh yeah, computers will do so much more, but they will still be gigantic.
Yeah.
And it's like the actual trend in technology was just like making everything smaller, and that's like much more the advancements that we experienced in our lifetime, you know.
That is the one thing that bothers me too, that room that they go in to speak to Mother, and it's just
Yeah.
like a room of lights.
Yeah.
Like just random LEDs that just flash on and off. Are they buttons? Are they indicators? They have no labels.
That's
There's no
ex-
way a human could ever know what to do with those.
I always like see this as like when I watch it, like it doesn't bother me. Like I see it as like just like another alternate place, time, world. Like
Yeah,
just
it
feels
doesn't
like
take
it's its
me out or
own
anything.
design.
It's not killing me, but I did have that moment where I was like, what the
And
fuck
they are
do all those
labeled,
lights
actually.
do?
I noticed this time watching, I was like, oh, they do have little labels.
I just
do
think
they?
it's a classic paradigm of like older movies always like they kind of get the advancement of technology a little bit right, but it's always just everything's just gigantic. When it's like what technology really did that advanced it was like putting
Be
it in your
small.
pocket,
Yeah.
making it small.
Yeah.
You know?
They actually are rigged on the bridge where they actually don't spend a lot of time, but where they all like have seats and stuff. They actually rigged it so that if one person pushes some buttons here, it would change the lights flashing on another person's console, so they could kind of interact with each other.
That's cool.
So it'd like give them something to actually do that was, you know, sort of randomizing and changing what they were cooperating with.
I had read that before David Giler and Walter Hill came on board, and their Brandywine Pictures was like on the Fox lot at the time. So before 20th Century Fox got involved, they were like ready to sell this script to what's the B movie producer's name? He's
Roger
like,
Corman.
Roger
Yep.
Corman. Yeah, this could have been a Roger Corman movie.
Yeah.
And like you could very much see that. And in
Star
fact,
Beast. It would have still been called Star Beast for
it
sure.
would have been called Star Beast. And didn't they do a movie called like Battle Beyond the Stars or something
Yeah,
like
something
that?
like that, yeah.
All those movies are kind of like this. They're kind of like Alien ripoffs.
Yep.
But like, yeah, I mean, I could just see this movie as a.
Oh, totally.
We missed out.
Yeah, and that was the other thing is, you know, it was like it's a good testament to, like I said, I think Dan O'Bannon gets a lot of credit or deserves a lot of credit for having so much of the conceptual idea of this so early on, because so many things happen when you go from a script to the movie, and obviously his script changed significantly, but he had a lot of the ideas that made it all the way there that are important elements of what this is. So I think he deserves a lot of credit, but then also, you know, Walter Hill, David Giler came in and really made this script what it is, changed it dramatically, added some of the best elements of it, really understood what the great value moments were. And then Ridley Scott came in, and, you know, this was supposed to be a $4 million movie. They were like, yeah, we really want this space movie. Here's $4 million. And Ridley Scott came in with storyboards and just went all out with his storyboards. And they were like, okay, here's $8 million. You know, like
Yeah.
double the budget just because they were so impressed with his pitch. So, and this is Ridley Scott. Ridley Scott is not a famous director now. He had done The Duelists, which was
Now
like
meaning 1979.
right.
Okay.
Exactly. he had done a movie called The Duelists, which was like about, you know, it was like a period piece about guys who fight duels. And he had no sci-fi cred, no, you know, like he actually hadn't watched a horror movie, which is like ever, which is why I think it was O'Bannon that told him to watch Chainsaw Massacre. And obviously he came in and was just like, he got the job, and then totally blew everyone away with how prepared he was and what kind
So
of
what
plan
year
he
was
had.
Blade Runner then?
And
That's
it was his
after
follow-up to
this.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was a big commercial director. He had done a lot of commercials.
And also with like Walter Hill had turned down they had originally wanted Walter Hill to direct, who was like, you know, ended up, like I said, a huge action movie director from the 70s and 80s. And he wasn't interested in directing, wanted to do something else. Maybe he had a conflict or something like that. But to be on set with Walter Hill and David Giler, guys who had made a few movies, who knew what they were doing, who actually were both directors and writers, and apparently they were looking over Ridley Scott's shoulder quite a bit and saying he was taking too long, he was shooting too many this and blah, 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 blah. And there was a lot of second guessing going on, which I can imagine was an additional challenge that Ridley Scott had to kind of overcome, even though obviously those guys were very big parts of the creative process and contributed a lot. I'm sure there were also times when he was just like, leave me the fuck alone and let me make my movie.
Right. Here's what I think about Ridley Scott. He should have like a lot of PAs, and they should all act like a gang. And like when they like come into a room, people should get scared and be like, "Oh shit, it's them Riddle boys," and then they run away.
I got a question about your process. When, like, you were like, Riddle boys, that's a good punchline. How can I get to that? Like, I just don't know any part of what you were saying. I have no idea how.
To me, I've got like the whole imagery of like this gang of like, there's got to be one like up on a box, like in a crouch, and then like one's, doing the fist punching the hand, and like, they've got costumes and like, it's the Riddle boys, and like, and Ridley Scott's there, maybe with his, generic director's stuff.
I guess.
He's
The
got,
beret and the
the little scope on the chain.
Yeah.
And then there's got to be somebody that's just scared because they're like, they're like, oh shit, it's the Riddle boys, and then they run away.
Are we going to just wait for him to finish, or can we stop?
This is the perfect segue.
This is the perfect segue to anything else.
Yeah, we have
Oh my God.
so much more to say about this movie. But before we get into like our favorite kills, should we summarize the plot?
I think
at
we
this
should.
point?
Who's doing that?
I
picked the movie, so it can't be
Matt.
me.
I think it's me.
You. Yeah. Okay.
All right. I'm pretty familiar with these movies, so I feel like.
All right. Well,
I'll be
let's
better.
see. Maybe you'll get it. Maybe you'll do a good job. Maybe you won't.
Just tell me
All
when
right.
you got.
You ready?
Yep.
Go.
All right. So the Nostromo is the name of the ship. It's got a crew of 7, and it's on its way back to Earth. They're all asleep in hypersleep or whatever, and they get this beacon message, and it wakes them all up, and they find out that it's a distress signal, and they need to go check it out contractually, even though they're not going to get paid any extra to do so. That brings them to this planet, and they go down, and they find a bunch of eggs and a derelict spaceship, and they don't know what the fuck anything is, and it's unclear if they've ever discovered any sort of creatures outside of mankind before. So one of the guys finds an egg, and a creature bursts out, and it latches onto his face, and they bring him back to the ship. They lay him out, and they realize that the spider-like creature has acid for blood, so they can't kill it. They can't cut it. It'll burn through the hull of the ship and kill them all. So they don't know what to do. So they leave him, and then next thing they know, the creature is gone, and they find it, and it's dead, and they look at it, and they don't know what the fuck it is. He seems fine, the guy. He wakes up. I forget his name. And they're all having dinner at night, and he has an alien inside of him. It bursts out of his stomach and kills him. It's a little alien, and they go to kill it, but then they're told not to by Ash, who's secretly in on it, and he wants the alien to kill them all. And it escapes. It grows very quickly, and one by one, it starts picking them all off. It has a long head, a penis-like head. It's always drooling. It looks awesome. And eventually they all get killed except for Ripley, and she escapes in the escape pod at the end, and she thinks she's safe. She gets down to her skivvies, and the alien's there with her, and she's got to fight it with her 70s bush, and she blows it out of the airlock, and that's the end of the movie. Alien.
All right. It looks like a giant drooling penis, which is awesome, as we all know.
She fights it with her bush.
For the folks at home who haven't seen Alien, she does not actually fight it with her bush.
That's the powers.
There's
the unspoken powers.
No bush in this movie.
It's implied. It's subtext, Harris.
Ridley Scott actually asked her to grow her pubes out.
He didn't have to. All right, so all right. There's so many things. Like, okay, so the face hugger was just on screen, and they're like probing the inside of it, and it's clearly just like
seafood,
oysters or something. Yeah.
This goes back to what you're talking about. Does that make it more of an R movie or less than of an R movie? Because it's gross. It's weird, right?
It's gross and weird, but it's like that's your imagination at play. You know,
I
It's
know.
like,
Yeah.
you're just looking at food.
Yeah.
It's not
it's
like
gross or weird or delicious.
But I guess you could say that about a
oysters.
death scene when like blood is spraying everywhere. Like it's just food coloring, you know.
Yeah, that's true. Apparently, they used a lot of real blood and animal meat in the scene where the thing bursts out of John Hurt's chest.
Oh.
And apparently, the set just stunk for like days after because they couldn't clean it all up. And
That's another story that supposedly they didn't tell the cast what was about to happen. They were unaware of exactly what was to transpire when the thing burst out of the guy's stomach, and supposedly, the reactions, it's all from the first take, or primarily from the first take, and the reactions are pretty authentic because
they look scared.
I read another story that, because that's like the famous lore.
Yeah.
I read another story that's actually the second take where it burst out, because the first time the thing doesn't get out of his shirt, like the shirt didn't rip like it was supposed to. And so they actually have that shot in the movie, because there's like one shot of where the thing doesn't quite burst out.
Right.
And they kept that in there, but then so they actually knew that something was going to burst out of his chest, but it was the explosive blood that they weren't prepared for.
That also made it like have more impact,
Sure.
it was more gruesome, because it's like this thing is slowly blasting its way out of him.
Totally.
And he's like screaming in pain the whole time.
It's awful to watch. And apparently they didn't plan to squirt Veronica Cartwright directly in the face with all of the blood. That just, they didn't know where it was going to go, and it ended up mostly on her, and she was very traumatized by it. By the way, she showed up to set the first day for the pre-production for costume fitting, thinking that she was playing Ripley. And then they told her, "Oh no, we got somebody else. You were gonna play Ripley.
You're actually playing Tom Skerritt.
you're
the actor?
you're the alien."
The actor? But we think you're that good."
Like, Tom Skerritt is also in this film playing a different guy, but you're playing Tom Skerritt. Now here's your beard.
How does this add to the story of the alien attacking us?
Ridley's
You'll
foreign.
understand.
He's European. He just likes to do things differently.
This is interesting too, because these are all, I think this cast is really bizarre, because at this point in their careers, like, this is the movie that most of these people are best known for.
Well, Veronica Cartwright she was sort of like a kid actor leading up to this, right?
Yeah, she probably had started at the youngest age of anyone here, because this is literally like Sigourney Weaver is 29, almost 30 when she makes this movie. But this is one of her first films. She had not had any kind of major acting roles in anything ever. She went to college. She went to Yale to grad school for theater.
I thought you were just gonna say college.
She's a woman who went to college.
And look what happened.
I think she went to Stanford for her undergrad, and then she went to Yale for grad school for drama. She was a classmate of Meryl Streep's, and then she did some theater stuff for a few years. And she didn't even think about being in movies until she was almost 30.
Until she realized her dad was like the head of Fox.
And then, like, everyone else in this movie had been an actor for about a decade, but all of them were pretty much character actors. Every single one of them had been like minor actors in things. Tom Skerritt hadn't had a major, like, this is the closest thing he had to a leading role for most of his career. And, obviously Yaphet Kotto and Harry Dean Stanton were very experienced character actors, and obviously Ian Holm and John Hurt are both guys who had been working for about 10 years, but had never had a huge part in this sort of. They concocted this ensemble, which in retrospect is like, wow, there's a lot of really talented, famous actors here, but at this time, none of them were that famous.
John Hurt had done one big role prior to this. I think he had been nominated for an Oscar.
Yes, Man for All Seasons, which starred our buddy Robert Shaw.
Yaphet Kotto was a Bond villain a few years prior.
No, they'd all done stuff. They'd all been in things, but they were kind of like journeyman. But even that, the Oscar nomination that John Hurt got was as a supporting role, and that was kind of his breakout. And then he continued to get supporting roles. I think he did The Hit before this with Stephen Frears, I think, or maybe that was just after.
I think Veronica Cartwright was in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which was like a year before this movie came out.
And she was starting to do like more like sci-fi horror stuff now. She was in The Birds as a child, actress.
And her sister was in Sound of Music, I think. Right?
Small anecdote, it's not that interesting, but I'm going to tell it anyways. The first role actually that Sigourney Weaver ever got, if you would call it that, was like, she's kind of, you can't really see her, but she's Woody Allen's date at the very end of the movie of Annie Hall, which won Best Picture, and she's actually credited in the credits.
Yeah, you blink and you miss her. Apparently, they had intended to give her a bigger part, but she was on some play. She was in some play that one of her friends from Yale was doing, and just didn't have the time to shoot it.
I thought she got lost in the hall.
just to say
Annie
Hall?
Hall.
Is it?
Oh, it's just funny because Woody Allen's
trying
pretty
so hard.
short and Sigourney Weaver's really tall,
Yeah.
and that's the only thing you can really see in
Mhm.
the scene that she's in. There's
Giant
like,
brunette.
yeah.
I want to talk about. So we just saw one of my. There's so like I said, I feel like some of the action moments in this movie are not cut as well as they could be.
I disagree. It's a perfect movie, Harris, but go ahead.
I think I disagree too, but continue.
I'm just saying, like the choppy way they do a lot of the kills, I think doesn't work. It's like they're cutting around stuff when they clearly don't have to be. But I will say my two least favorite individual shots, which for years, because this isn't the first Alien movie I ever saw. Aliens was the first one I ever saw. So Aliens is a better movie, I think. And also, so I have like an affection for Aliens that I don't have for this film. But when I did watch this movie for the first time, two shots really stuck out as things that like really annoyed me as looking so fake they took me out of the movie. And one of them is when the chest burster runs across the table and you could see that it's clearly just some guy with a thing on a stick, just dragging it across the table. Like it looks like a Muppet, like with like the tails flopping around and the thing's just like bouncing across the table.
When are we going to talk about Spaceballs? Okay, like I've had enough. When are we going to talk about Spaceballs?
I was going to finish my thought, but go ahead and talk about Spaceballs, Colin.
Just the absolute best parody of this ever. The guy telling the joke about Pluto. Come on, it's so good.
Because of the Bach, you dummy.
Because of the Bach, you dummy. They're all laughing.
Water my ass. Get this guy some Pepto-Bismol.
It's so good. What did that guy have? The special check, please. Okay, let's go back to talking about Alien. I just couldn't take it anymore.
The other thing is when you finally see the alien get blown out of the hatch at the end, and it's like clearly a guy in a suit, and also it's not like it's just like floating out there in space kind of flaccidly.
I would
it's
say
just they both. It's like two moments when a movie that manages to make stuff look pretty real and good just doesn't look even close to real.
Well, I think for its time, it was probably totally
don't give
fine.
me that for its time bullshit. They did all the
No,
other
no, no.
stuff
I'm
right.
saying that like when I watch it today, like I'm so engrossed in it, like I don't really see it. Like I do, but I don't at the same time because the movie has already won me over. And like those little things just aren't.
It wins me over and then it loses me every time with those two shots. Not like totally loses me, but in that moment, I'm always like, ugh.
The only
there's
time
that
it looks
shot
like
again.
a guy in a suit to me is when you see like just the forearm. There's a couple shots where they show the hand like opening up.
when he jumps up, but he
And it's
doesn't
like-
like do anything. He's like trying to like force
Yeah, because
push
they cut it
people.
before they see the hand make contact with whatever it's
Right.
reaching for, right? But when you see the forearm, that to me looks like, like a very
the more
kind
you
of a
see of his
shin- like
limbs-
a soccer shin guard combined with a glove.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
more you
kinda-
see of the
kinda see it,
limbs.
you know.
I think the later movies they tend to stick to just the face. Like the face of it looks so alien and so
Yes.
cool and different. You can see that it obviously it has limbs and stuff, but they don't harp on those things the way that this movie did.
Yeah, and this movie does a good job of not showing it too much for most of the movie. It's really it's sort of just at the end where you get to see a little more of its body as it moves around. And then when it flies out of the airlock, it's just you're seeing the whole thing, and it doesn't look good.
It kind of takes the Jaws approach where you
Right.
don't really see the creature very much at all until the end of the movie,
Mhm.
and the mystery of not seeing it actually makes it better and scarier.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of would have liked it.
This is
if
a good jump scare, though, when they think they've got it cornered, and it turns out it's a cat.
Oh yeah.
That's never been done in horror.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very
fake out.
revolutionary.
Also, the cat's name is Jonesy. Thank you very much.
Also, then they just tell Harry Dean Stanton that because he dropped the net and let the cat go, he's got to go off by himself to hunt the cat. Which is like, at this point, do we send people off alone? I don't know.
Right.
Probably not.
I would have
They
liked
must
it
hate him.
if she just shot the alien out of the airlock and like it wasn't still attached on that rope, and then like I don't need them like blowing it up. Like it did kind of look cool when it tries to go in the engine and then she like fries it with the engine exhaust.
Yeah.
But
But it didn't really look like it was trying. To me, it didn't look like it was trying to go in the engine. It looked like it kind of just floated around there because
Right,
it
yeah.
really wasn't moving. It didn't seem very mobile. It was just kind of spazzing out.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough call, but I think it would have been cool if it just went out the airlock.
I agree.
And maybe like I don't know. It'd be nice if like an asteroid was flying by right then. It's just
Or another spaceship,
Or
like
a comet,
a
yeah.
space bus.
yeah, space bus.
A space bus driver is like, "Ah, shit! I got alien all over my windshield. I'm gonna need new space wipers."
Not again.
Space bus driver, very inspired by Otto from the
A lot of
Simpsons.
space gas.
Yeah,
Oh, I gotta pick up some space gas for my space bus.
space bus.
Stupid. Before we started recording, Alex, you started ranting and raving about like the this movie being a metaphor for motherhood or like.
I was literally making. I mean, I don't know. It's not something I've read about. I don't think or
That's what he wants to go
discussed.
on record about.
Yeah, and I'm questioning whether or not I should bring it up. But like, there's a lot of, what feels like references to like motherhood and maybe female sexuality, or because you got something that like impregnates you. It's got comes out of you, out of your stomach.
Head looks like a penis.
Yeah. The other thing is the computer.
It's
That's
called
in charge of
Mother.
him is
There you
called
go.
Mother.
There you go.
Sigourney Weaver, our protagonist, is a woman.
Is this?
And like her thing is that she's like protecting their lives, including the life of the cat.
But it impregnates
ship-
a man.
Right.
Yes.
Well, maybe they're changing it up. The ship itself that they go into is very vaginal. The canals, the like hallways that they go into are like.
Everything in this movie is penises and vaginas.
Yeah.
We're
It's very,
definitely-
I think that's the Geiger
That's a
influence.
used condom
Yeah.
he's
Apparently,
looking at right now.
yeah, clearly the alien skin is a used condom. I think everything that Geiger does is very penis and vagina centric.
Inspired.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd be curious to see if that analysis exists somewhere out there. If that was at all.
Like even these doors, like that shit looks awesome. The production design,
Yeah,
in
it's
it
amazing.
Yeah.
is sick.
And now he's going to go into that room, that chain
I like
and,
this shot.
that chain and water room that doesn't really make sense.
Every
I guess,
ship
on a
has a
but it's
chain and water
awesome.
room.
But it's awesome. I wouldn't.
Oh, yeah.
I would not take it away.
I feel like this is actually a scene that like tonally reminds me of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The horror of it, the suspense of it. That
Mhm.
movie, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, is actually like pretty quiet in a
Mhm.
lot of
I can,
the way they build suspense. Go ahead.
oh, sorry.
Great set.
My task is to try to explain why this room exists. I'm gonna say that like they're carrying so much ore that they need something that like compresses and compacts the ore into like maybe little cubes or something, so that there's like no.
They're a
You know,
tugboat. They're towing the ore. There's no ore on their ship.
The ship has all sorts of rooms that operate in different ways, and those chains they're kind of like pulleys, and they like. Sometimes they're hot and they need to get a little wet. So
You know what it is? That is where when they're normally flying under normal circumstances, Harry Dean Stanton and Yaphet Kotto are down there, and when somebody's like when somebody up on the bridge turns the ship left, like turns the steering wheel to the left, it just a big sign lights up down there that says left, and they've got to like tug the chains to change the rudder, the massive rudder on this ship, because that's how space works.
Yeah.
And because they get so hot down there, the rain is just to cool them down a little bit.
Oh, okay.
yeah, it's
I like
hell
how we're
is that
talking about
sound?
this watery room, and my front lawn sprinklers just went on.
Can we do something about that?
We could just build it into the show.
Oh God,
Sounds beautiful.
yeah.
There's just a bunch of people outside telling us to shh.
I love this whole sequence right here where
I think it's brilliant. I'm not.
and the cat backing up slowly, like how they got
Getting
the cat to
scared.
do that.
This is a
Yeah.
hell of a cat actor. I gotta say, like this cat can act.
They did the old Close Encounters of the Third Kind trick with the cat in this one, where they had a German Shepherd sitting behind a blind,
Yeah.
and the cat wrangler called the cat out, and the cat started coming out, and then they pulled the blind open, and the cat saw the dog, and
The cat was actually nominated for an Oscar.
cat Oscar.
What most people don't know is there's a little person in a cat costume because they couldn't. The dog thing didn't work, and so
The
they're
cat
like,
Oscars are called
See,
the Whiskers.
what is that? It's just like that initial hit is just like 3 random shots that don't make any coherent sense.
I love it.
Know,
It's perfect.
You know what's great though?
Perfect.
You know which one I love?
Perfect.
My favorite shot in this movie is when John Hurt leans over the egg, and then it's actually like 4 different shots of the alien leaping out of the egg onto his face, but they're all like about 4 frames long, and then you see him like sort of fall over with the alien stuck to his helmet or whatever, and then you immediately cut from that, like him screaming and all the noise and everything, to the outside of the ship. And they do like a slow pullback from the outside of the ship where all you can hear is like the wind howling.
Yeah.
And it's so like it's like, oh, bad shit went down, and now we're just somewhere else. You're gonna have to wait and find out what happened. And
Not
also,
that long. The very next shot is them like putting him onto the other ship, onto like the
no. The very next shot is back in the Nostromo where Sigourney Weaver and what's his name, Ian Holm, are dicking around waiting, and it's just like we get. Like
but then they're there.
No, we get
in,
three
like, hey,
shots
we're at
of
the door.
them sitting around waiting, and then we get a shot of the people walking back carrying him, and then we get a shot of them on the lift, and then they get up to the top. It's all like they do the whole thing. But what I like about it is that we don't have to watch them like figure out how they got him out of the place that he was down in, and you know this movie does a really good job of getting in and out of scenes at the right points. And that's one where we just cut out all the shit that we didn't need to see, but it keeps us in suspense about like what happened for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the way scenes are constructed in this a lot, and I actually just watching it now, I noticed that a couple of times that they had a lot of good ins and outs from scenes that like
They don't waste my fucking time.
yeah, exactly.
They know their movie's slow, so they're not going to waste our time with extra stuff that we don't need to see.
And they do a good job of like the plot with her and the android and her suspicions about it and stuff. It's very like secondary to what's going on, but you still know it's another thing that's going on.
Mm-hmm. I forgot that they weren't supposed to know he was an android at the beginning. When I was watching this time, I was like, oh yeah, that is a reveal. Yep. That must have been pretty shocking for people, especially because he doesn't play it as an android at all. Like that would be one of my criticisms.
What about with the
No,
running in
you
place
watch
thing?
back.
That was really weird.
I've watched it. I've watched this movie numerous times, looking at his performance, and he's like, again, they disguised it really well. He's super
because he does a lot of
android.
weird idiosyncrasies.
He's like very devoid of emotion, and he's constantly like defending, the alien. He's constantly
he's
like
devoid of emotion, but he does a lot of weird, like idiosyncratic, like human things, like twitching and scratching his eye and stuff like that you wouldn't associate with, like a robot doesn't need to like scratch his forehead.
But you could see it being programmed to do certain things,
Right, exactly.
or almost like glitches. Is like when certain, whatever.
Right.
Yeah, but the running in place thing, like that was very android
weird.
to me.
Yeah.
Because like even when I run in place by myself when no one's looking, it's like not that robot-y.
Wait. When does he run in place?
There's a part in the movie where
Anytime we turn our backs on him, seriously, if we all turn around right now, he will do it.
they just cut to him and he just like kind of goes like this, and he even makes like a little kind of a noise,
Yeah.
which like
Very
harks back
strange.
to later in the movie when he goes haywire and he's like,
Wait, when does that happen?
Early, we've seen it already.
yeah. it
What
happens.
what was the context of that moment?
I don't remember. They
It's like,
just like
it's like they're all getting ready to do something. He doesn't actually go on the mission, but like
Yeah,
I think it's right before they actually exit the ship.
Yeah,
And he's like, everyone's getting ready to exit the ship or something, and he like does that as if he's getting ready also. And I think it's not clear at that point whether he's actually going outside the ship also or whatever, but then he doesn't.
On the topic of penises and vaginas, these doors that Dallas goes through look like anuses.
I thought you were gonna say cervixes.
Well, I guess that too, but mostly anuses.
Yeah, they're in the anus of the ship right now. Do you guys remember the Simpsons episode where Santa's little helper is
Yeah.
like in the vents, and
Yeah.
I think it's Willie has to.
Nary a creature that was born that could outrun a greased Scotsman.
So good. He's all greased up.
Lunch Lady Doris, do you have any grease? Then grease me up, woman.
Grease me up, woman.
I love how he's ripped.
Yeah, totally shredded.
Oh man! All right, so
Yeah,
what
that's
else?
another thing that when your movie is really hit some sort of zeitgeist, when it's still being made fun of, still being satired to this day. Like
Yeah.
it's been satired probably 1,000 times in pop culture.
We haven't gotten to my favorite line in the script yet. It's the meeting they have after this when they're all trying to figure out what to do next, and Yaphet Kotto says something like, "As long as we're talking about killing it," and she's like, "Obviously, I'm talking about killing it."
Oh yeah. That scene feels really organic to me.
Yes,
really,
that feels like it's not a scripted scene.
Yeah,
it feels
totally.
like they're literally just talking.
they're bickering.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were just told to like bicker.
Yeah.
Well, apparently, Ridley Scott told Yaphet Kotto to be a dick to Sigourney Weaver.
Yeah,
on
that's
set
what
I
it
all
seems
love
time.
the way they play their relationship. He's
Yeah.
like, he's very much like, I hate all of the bridge crew because I'm like the working person
Yeah.
in this, but I do eventually have to respect that Sigourney Weaver is smart. I'm just like, gonna give her a really fucking
But I
hard
hate,
time.
yeah, but I
about
do
this.
hate her because she's my boss.
Yeah, exactly.
And she's a ball buster.
Yeah.
Hey, I ran top 4 for the last series.
I think I'm supposed to do it for. I think.
it's
don't-
Well, you
whoever-
got a laptop open, so
I
why
do
don't
have a
you-
laptop
why don't you
open.
do it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So top 4, Alex. We are looking for the top 4 on according to IMDb for whatever member
Actor we
of the
choose.
film, actor, filmmaker, whatever.
That's a lot. Top 4. We should
It's whatever IMDb thinks.
Keep it the top 2.
Can we change it?
It's whatever IMDb thinks their top 4 is, which could be anything. But I'm going to give you guys an easy one to start off with because this is only one of these is difficult because he just hasn't been in a lot of really famous things. So we're going to do Tom Skerritt. And since you are the guest, Alex, you get to go first. What in his only movies? So no picket fences for this one.
Alien.
Ding, ding, ding. You got it right.
Next.
Colin, would you like to go next?
Fuck, no. Why'd you pick Tom Skerritt?
Because he's only been in a few movies.
He's actually
I only
in
know
lots of
one
movies.
other movie that he's in that I could think
Like
of.
this game isn't funner when it's harder, Harris.
This is one of the easier ones. I looked at a few of them.
He reminds me a lot of that one guy who was in that sitcom, but he's not that guy.
Matt, do you have a guess?
Yeah,
Why do you go, Matt?
Contact.
Ding, ding, ding. You got it right. See, I'm telling you, it's all the Colin guess, and we'll do a hint round starting the second
The
round.
Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring.
No.
Wrong.
All right, so we'll start our hint round early. He plays a pilot in this movie.
Oh, I know what it is.
Well, it's Alex's turn to guess. So fuck you.
Why is it my? I already went.
Yeah, but you gotta
I
go.
brilliantly said out
We're going in a
Alien.
circle. Get it wrong so I can get one.
A pilot. I don't know.
Pilot, you say?
I know what it is. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
I'm gonna,
just-
I'm gonna be
You
so
might be.
embarrassed if I'm wrong too.
No, you go for it. I
Are you
don't know.
both going to
wait,
pass?
wait, no, wait.
Yeah.
I can think of movies with planes in them. Is it's a airplane pilot, or a helicopter pilot, perhaps, or a
Could be a
Don't
boat
tell us.
pilot.
You
I
know
don't
any helicopter movies.
Pilot is a pretty big clue for this
Yeah.
one.
Air Force One.
No.
Wrong.
Isn't it
No.
Top Gun?
It is
Obviously.
Top Gun.
Isn't
He
he
plays
Viper or the-
Viper in
he's-
Top
yes.
Gun. He plays
Nailed it.
the instructor.
Nailed it.
Yeah. Okay, so this last one really will require a big hint. It was one of the first movies of his career. Came out in 1970, and it was directed by Robert Altman. He's part of an ensemble cast.
Oh wait.
Nash?
Is
No,
it-
Nashville. Oh,
Nash.
Okay.
Nash.
He's in Mash. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, Mash.
Yep. So it's pretty good. Pretty good, guys.
Wait, isn't he the guy
Lot of
who
hits.
Alan Alda played in the series, or is he the other guy?
So his character's named Duke
Radar?
Forrest, so I don't know
Oh,
who
no, I
that
don't think so.
is.
Radar is not Alan Alda.
All right, you want to know? You want to do one?
Oh, okay.
you want to do one where you know all 4 of these movies, but this is going to be fucking insanely
Well,
hard.
can we do
Sure.
like? I bet you Sigourney Weaver is like. We could do her like in a lightning round. Like we could get all 4.
Why you got to put pressure on him like that?
Maybe, but we could also do her for one of the other movies.
Yeah,
so
let's do her later.
there's a good cast in this one. Let's do Ridley Scott.
Ooh, okay.
Ooh, all right. Ridley Scott.
So I'm gonna say Thelma and Louise.
What the fuck? That's
No.
your first Ridley Scott guess?
He directed that?
Did
Yeah.
well, how about
That's one of his
Gladiator?
best.
No, just stick with Thelma and Louise. It's right. You can't guess twice, Alex. Just stick with one answer.
Okay,
at a
so I'm
time.
right though.
yeah, you got it.
Yes.
Okay, so F
Yes,
you.
But like, why in the hell?
I was gonna guess that too.
That's such an iconic movie.
All of you just associate Ridley Scott with Thelma and Louise.
yeah, it's a
No,
classic.
I didn't know he directed it. I love Thelma
I
and Louise.
didn't know he directed it either. Oh my god. Okay. All right.
Who's up next, Colin?
Yeah, Colin, you want to go
Blade
next?
Runner.
Ding, ding, ding.
Gladiator, probably right? Didn't he do?
That's my guess. Gladiator.
Okay.
And probably
Gladiator,
Alien's
you're
the
right.
other one, right?
All right.
Which one?
Assholes.
And then the last is Alien.
you
Probably,
got
right?
3 of them.
He's guessing Alien.
For the 4th,
Eh,
no.
Nope.
Wrong.
Black Hawk Down.
You can only guess
you
one.
only
We're
get one
going
at a time.
We're taking turns.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
I,
turn-based.
I just thought that there was a lightning round that was special or something.
Turn-based.
Never again.
Colin, you
There'll
got to
never be a
guess.
Kingdom of Heaven.
No.
Oh,
No.
obviously
Wrong.
not.
So we've got one more for him,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not that. Okay.
I thought I was going to have to give you Thelma and Louise hints. I was like trying to come up with good ones.
Sorry,
Swear to God,
I
I thought you
ruined
guys
it.
were going to get stuck on that one.
Isn't it the Grand Canyon they drive into in the end?
Yeah.
You could have done
Most
some sick
believable
Grand Canyon
ending
shit.
of all time. Like,
Is this are we allowed to ask questions? Is this
We're not through the second round.
all
yet.
right? So I just have to guess something.
And you guys have gotten 3 in a row.
All right, Black Hawk Down.
No.
Okay.
All right.
Wrong.
So second round. I'll give you this hint. This is a movie that's come out in the last 5 years.
Oh, okay.
Robin Hood.
oh, The Martian.
Well, Alex is good at this game.
yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
That's
very
like the
good at
only decent movie he's made in a long time.
Yeah.
Matt,
He's
I can't
got-
believe you guessed Robin Hood. That was so good.
I didn't guess that.
The movie that nobody saw.
All right.
He's got 2 movies coming out this year, like in the same month, I think. He's got
What are they?
The Last Duel,
Mhm.
and then
Yeah.
another one called
I saw the
Gucci,
preview for The Last Duel.
House of Gucci or something like that,
Last Duel has Matt Damon and
and Ben Affleck.
And they wrote
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Their return to screenwriting.
Yep.
After a 20-year.
And Ben Affleck is blonde in it.
Yeah. This is super silly, but
And Nicole Holofcener also wrote it. Holofs? I don't know.
do you think it also ends with like Ben Affleck going to his house and he's not there?
Yeah.
I really hope so.
It
It
also
ends with him
sounds
saying, "How do you like them apples?"
He's in a jalopy. He's driving to the coast of France.
Yeah. It was all in medieval times before that. But yeah, he somehow has a jalopy. I hope so.
So is that it for top 4?
Yeah, that's it.
I feel
for
like
top
we've
4
been
for now.
banging through this game.
I
Lately.
know we're
we
getting too good. We sort of know we've got a sixth sense for what stupid.
We need to come up
movies
with a new bit. I think.
IMDb thinks of. Well, we had the who's the oldest bit.
Who's the oldest? Yeah, that was pretty good. Do we have any afterthoughts? I like that bit where we go back and like talk about something. I guess we kind of did that before. I said something. I don't remember what it was.
Wait, what was Afterthoughts again?
When you get more information on something that you talked about in a prior episode.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
The Sheriff Brody video game with
Yeah, we
Yeah.
kind
Sigourney
of that
Weaver
was
as
kind
a
of an
new character.
afterthought.
I just leave it in the past. I don't like to live in the past.
You guys could come up with cool questions beforehand, and then
Whoa.
we did. We've already
Are you
been
dissing
doing
the
it.
Yeah,
show?
I'm maxed out on work for this podcast. I watched the movie.
It sounds like Harris did a lot of research
that
for
was
this
a
one.
big part of
All
it.
right, all right,
And I
all right.
already knew some stuff about it, but I did do a little research.
Can you really kill someone with a magazine?
If
in
you're
their
a
mouth?
robot,
Okay, wait, hold up.
Why do they have magazines? I'm
There was a movie. Yeah.
sorry. Why the fuck is there a magazine there?
I love the casual nudity in the background too, by the way.
Yeah.
Anyway, there was a movie I saw when I was a kid.
Matt's nipple radar went off.
Yeah.
He's like, wait, there's nipples somewhere.
There was a movie I saw when I was a kid that like scarred me, and I don't know what movie this is. And it's like, if I can remember correctly, it was like some sort of gang thing where like they kidnap this guy and they bring him to their hideout, and it's a bunch of gang members, and they're torturing this guy. But the way they torture him is they roll up a magazine just like that, and they shove it in the guy's mouth.
Oh,
And-
really?
Yeah.
Not his anus?
Yeah, and I like
That's weird.
seeing it in this movie. I'm like, maybe that was a thing back then. I don't know. Like, it's
Magazines are dead. We'll never know.
it's a lot scarier in the movie I'm talking about.
It's worse when they try to do it with an iPad.
Yeah. But to this day, I don't know what that movie is, and I've like tried to Google it, like movies with like newspaper or magazines being jammed down someone's throat,
And it's just Alien every time.
yeah, I can't find it.
This movie, like, terrified me as a young person. Like, I didn't get to like really watch the whole thing until later. You know,
That's
like
something
when I
we
saw it
haven't
as a
done
young
yet.
person, I had to like look away. I was like, this is too gross, too scary.
Yeah, that's something we haven't done yet. What was everyone's first experience watching this movie? Colin, you're already on the.
Yeah, I mean, like I remember going back and seeing it again after like getting more into my teenage years and being like, okay, I want to like see all the aliens, and like I think starting with the Winona Ryder one and then going back, but I did see it also when I was younger, but like I couldn't watch it. It was too scary. Like I only saw certain things, you know.
The Aliens and Predator movies and Terminators and RoboCops were such a huge part of my childhood that it's almost hard for me to remember the first time I feel like I saw them like the day I was born, and they've just been a part of my life, my whole life.
Welcome to the world. Now watch this film.
I hear it's good for pregnant women to show the film to their bellies.
Matt, what was your first Alien experience?
I'm very similar to what Alex said. Someone said earlier that they saw. I think you said you saw Aliens before Alien, and I was trying to remember which one I saw first, and I really cannot remember. I'm my gut wants to tell me, I know my parents like this movie. They're like not as familiar with Aliens, but they consider this movie like a classic. So I could see my dad like putting this movie on for me at a young age and being like, "This is a movie, boy," you know. But then and then me being like, "Is there a sequel?" Oh, yeah, there's this other one called Aliens. And then me watching it and being like, "Holy fuck, this is amazing!" And my dad being like, "Ah, whatever, this isn't for me." But yeah, Aliens was definitely the one. Aliens and Alien 3 for me were the ones that like I really glommed onto as a kid. I always appreciated this one, but I think it was just a little too slow for me as a young person, and I gained more attraction, to it later on in life. Like watching it today, I was like, "This is wonderful."
Yeah,
This is a
actually,
wonderful
this is
movie.
something I was going to say earlier, which is when I was a kid, Aliens was always like the superior movie to me because it's action, it's Marines, it's blowing aliens up, the Mother Queen, whatever. But as an adult, especially as a cinephile, like a filmmaker, like this movie has grown on me almost to the point where I almost think I like this one more sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because of the cinematic qualities of this movie, even though I think Aliens is brilliant as well. It's like that's a tough one to beat, but there's actually a lot I really like about this movie.
The best answer is that it's like comparing apples to oranges. They're
Yeah,
just like two completely
exactly.
different things.
That's why they did such a good job with the sequels. They didn't try to make the same movie. They tried to make a very different movie.
Yeah, I don't think it's fair to compare the two of them. I do think Aliens is a better movie just on its own terms or whatever, and I think it's but it's one of my all-time favorites, and this movie will never be that. Maybe it's also a little bit that I just horror isn't my favorite genre. I didn't like horror movies as a kid, so
well, that was the thing is like I saw it when I was young, but I didn't see the whole thing because like it was too scary for me. And like when I was younger, I didn't appreciate horror the same way as I do now. Like I really enjoy a scary movie now. When I was younger, it was like, there was an age where it was like scary movies are too scary for me, you know?
Well, I specifically remember, I know I watched Aliens first because that was like a formative, God, I must have been, 6 or 7 years old, something like that. And I definitely remember, I feel like that should have like holes in it when they burn the flesh off the android's face.
It looks stiff. It
yeah.
doesn't look like something that can, but go ahead.
But
I still
anyways,
think that's a cool shot though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, like none of what you're pointing out like ever takes me out or bothers me.
Well,
like,
no, see, in that, like that, the whole android scene looks fake as hell, but that doesn't bother me. Like for some reason that one, because it also looks really cool or really good.
they do that cheap cut where it's like
Right.
obviously a fake thing, and then like someone crosses the frame, and then all of a sudden it's like his actual head.
Yeah.
But like you look at it and you're like, oh, filmmaking, I get it.
Right.
Oh yes, the cinema.
But I watched Aliens really young, and it was one of the first like scary movies I watched. I remember being like traumatized by the guy who's like still alive and he's in the part of the alien thing. And I remember they have main characters that die that I liked, and it was just very upsetting and exciting. And then I don't think I watched this until I was a teenager at least, and had the same reaction of like, oh, it's very slow, and like was disappointed and felt like it's not as good a movie, and it wasn't trying to be. It was totally different, standard. I have a much better appreciation for this now, but I will say this is still the movie that I've watched the least of the quadrilogy. I've definitely watched the even Alien 3, which is probably my second least watched movie. I've seen Aliens so many times, and I've seen Alien Resurrection more times than I care to admit, and actually will probably end up defending that movie as not being as bad as everyone says it is.
Can I just say something?
that bad.
Sorry, real quick. I'm sure I'll get deeper into this on our Alien Resurrection episode, but like I wasn't old enough to see the first 3 movies in the theater. And so I thought the trilogy, I thought it was done. She dies in the end of the 3rd movie. It's like, okay, what more can they do? And then when I was in middle school, it was announced that like they were doing a 4th one, and Sigourney Weaver was coming back. And I just like was so excited.
Yeah.
And you didn't love that movie? I feel like you were the perfect
Dude, let me
age
just tell you something. Do you guys know, have you ever heard of a website called Drew's Scriptorama?
Mhm.
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
It's a website that a guy, like, he had, like, movie scripts. I don't know how
I think
he
it's
got
still
them.
up. I think you can still get scripts on that site.
Well, he had an early draft of Alien Resurrection that downloading wasn't a thing back then. I printed it. I made my dad buy enough printer paper, and I printed, like, a 200-page or, like, whatever it was, like, script. And I was so excited. I like punched the holes in it. Like I had a script. I was like, I'm going to read this. And I read the whole thing. And I was just like so fucking excited for that movie. And I just remember sitting in the theater, and like all 3 of these the first 3 movies open in the same way. and then the fourth one doesn't. And it's like starts with different music, and you see like gyrating like alien guts or something. Like that's the opening. And I just remember as a kid thinking like, oh fuck, they fucked it
Something's
up.
not right.
Something's not right.
But you
Man,
know,
if it couldn't reach middle school you, I don't know. Because you were the audience, I think.
Yeah, I liked Resurrection when I saw it. It made me want to revisit all the other ones.
I was a kid and I knew like immediately I didn't like this movie. But you know,
I was already a fan of the filmmaker too, so I had
really
like a bias.
Almost nobody knew who that guy was. I just want to say before I forget, like Aliens is one of the movies, maybe even the movie I've seen the most in my life. I've seen it probably 40 or 50 times. And the reason is because me and my older brother were obsessed with this movie one summer when I was probably like, I don't know, 9 or something. We were obsessed with aliens. We were playing Marines with our toy guns. We tried to get the toys, the action figures, which were really difficult to get. We were obsessed with aliens, so much so that I shit you not, we made our dad watch it with us every night for an entire summer, and he never once complained. It never occurred to me as a kid to think, hey, maybe we shouldn't make our dad watch this movie every night.
And that's how your dad came up with 500 Days of Summer, the movie.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Which makes sense somehow.
It's a testament to a father's love who will sit there every night and watch the same damn movie with your kids.
Speaking of your dad, you once told me that
That's a great dad
I always
story.
love this, that your dad would make edited versions of movies for you guys.
Yes, he did that. I can't remember if he did that for
Cutting all
Aliens,
the
but he did
nipples
that for
out, or-
Predator. He did that for Terminator 2. My dad was very, kind of against just little kids seeing a lot of gore and violence. But he knew we loved these movies. We loved the characters, and so my dad, bought Terminator 2 when it came out on VHS, and then edited it so that me and my little brother could watch it without the really violent moments. And that might be the moment where like the T-1000 like shoots her hand into the husband's throat, things like that. I didn't see those scenes until I was way older, like a teenager. I had never seen it because we always just watched those VHS tapes. And my dad literally had the 2 VCRs and made these tapes so we could watch these things over and over. They were just playing on in the background throughout my entire childhood.
That's
Same
like
thing with Predator. I didn't see all the violent stuff for Predator till I was much older, but go ahead.
That's like how if you only watch the TV version of something, because in our house we just used to watch like Predator and stuff, and I remember when Carl Weathers' arm falls off, being probably watching that when I was a little too young and being like traumatized, but then like thinking, oh, this is cool. But like then there's the stuff that you only watch on TV for the longest time, and then you actually see the unedited version, and you're like, holy shit, there's a lot of crazy shit that goes on in this movie.
Yeah, the first time I saw Predator was definitely on cable.
Yeah, and that's things years later, those movies would play on TV, although they'd have commercials and they would edit it in all other ways too. But we were, we wanted to see it immediately, right? And it would take years for Terminator 2 to finally be on TV.
I always remember, speaking of that scene from Terminator when he stabs through the head and he's got like the milk carton. Is that the scene you're talking about? Yeah. I remember watching that in my like living room at the time, and my nana was over at the time, and she was like sitting next to me on the couch, and I was like young. I don't know why it was on, but I remember like being shocked and being like, and I turned to her, and her response was, "It's just make believe."
I mean, like I feel like what I was most sheltered from the Terminator movies specifically was in Terminator 1 when they have sex. Which is a great sex scene, by the way. I'm so glad I eventually got to see it. But like, I felt like that was when it was like, don't watch this part.
Yeah, my parents were a little more like on the, well, I don't want you to see boobs in anything, but you can see Carl Weathers get his arm shot off. You can definitely see the guy, the executive that just was having the worst day at work at the beginning of RoboCop when he gets like splayed and his guts are all over the table. That's okay. But if there's any tits in this movie, you're gonna have to shut your eyes.
And that's kind of like how the way cable networks edited stuff was a little bit geared towards that as
a little
well,
bit,
too.
yeah.
I have a question, since we're talking about like childhood and like the way these movies like affected us. Did you ever watch Rugrats?
Yes.
This is kind of not super on topic, but like there's a whole episode about the idea when you're a little kid, you swallow one of the watermelon seeds, the watermelon plant will grow inside you.
Right.
And like that is really terrifying, like when you're super young. And this is like a a very extreme version of that. Not only is it not a watermelon, it's like a face raping alien, and like what it plants inside of you is like a monstrous killing alien that will rip its way out of you. Like so gross, so scary.
You want to hear something really gross? I remember when I was a kid, I accidentally swallowed a booger, and I was terrified that I would go to the doctors and they would do an X-ray and they would see the booger in my stomach.
Well, we got a nose picker here.
My mother would be so ashamed. The doctor would just shake his head at me.
I like how you accidentally swallowed this booger.
I found this booger. Like he doesn't even own up to the fact that it's his booger. It's like I had this booger
I
somewhere.
thought it
near
was
me.
food, like actual food. I cut it with a knife and fork.
What did you think was gonna happen to you? Like
there would just be extreme shame. Like my mother would cry from shame, like her son.
Where are we going, Mommy? I thought that was my school. You don't go to that school anymore.
I'll take you to the orphanage.
You're a picker.
I
You're
could handle
homeschooled
some
now.
that was a picker, but a picker and an eater. Oh, God.
I have no son.
That's very like Japanese of you culturally. Like you didn't want to bring shame to your family. Yeah.
Can I also tell you that when I was a real little kid that I thought the world used to be black and white, like back in like the 20s and 30s and 40s. I literally thought the world at some point became color.
I always thought that, like, because you had all these relatives that were up in heaven, and people would say things like, "Oh, don't worry, Uncle whatever is watching you from heaven now." And I always used to assume that, like...
You think of that every time you masturbate?
Yeah, or picked my nose or did anything. It's like, oh, man, Grandma's going to be so upset when... Because I just assumed when people went to heaven, they just sat there looking at me, being like, what's Aaron up to today? Oh, God, he's picking his nose. Oh, no.
When it rains, it's Grandma crying from...
Yeah, from all the times you picked your nose or masturbated. Yeah.
Sorry, real quick, we're watching the director's cut, and there's the scene at the end where Ripley finds she finds the captain and the other guy, and they're like entombed. Dallas and Brett, yeah. They're entombed in like alien sludge, and she shoots them with the flamethrower and puts them out of their misery.
I didn't get to watch this today. I watched the regular cut.
Yeah, this is like
too.
the only real difference that I could, aside from like one or two little shots also around this like area of the film.
Yeah.
I think that the scene where Harry Dean Stanton dies is just a little bit gorier. There's a few extra frames.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because I think they cut away right after the alien punches into his chest, and in this one you get to see him get lifted up. And
I think it's a skull.
Yeah, because this shot right here, I did see today.
Yeah. So it just like eliminates that whole sequence we just saw.
Which is a great sequence.
But I was going to ask, like, so we don't know why it's entombing them. Like, it's like we don't know about the Queen and all that stuff in this movie, which they of course like later on use.
Usually,
that stuff.
more face huggers get to attack those ones, right?
Well,
or
the
is that
original
not how it works.
Yeah, but they can't. This alien can't produce face huggers.
But
Like,
Yeah, so why?
Well,
Right.
the original pitch was they hadn't. This is obviously getting into some of the like Queen alien stuff that comes up in the next movie, and at this point they hadn't determined that that's what happened yet.
yeah, I think
So-
at this point, it's just like keeping it there like a refrigerator.
You might,
Like,
yeah,
it's
you might
gonna-
think that it
They
might just
actually,
eat it
the
later.
original pitch was
Yeah.
that she was going to find Dallas, and he was going to have Brett was going to have an alien egg growing out of his stomach, like he had become one of the egg pods.
He looked like he was becoming one of the egg pods.
Right.
Yeah.
So the idea was that he would actually be like more like a fully formed egg pod, and then Dallas was going to be there for the baby for the face hugger to come out and impregnate
Oh,
when it was
interesting.
born. So it's like we were seeing like the life cycle of an alien in an enclosed space. But obviously, because not only did they cut the scene, but really they didn't even really follow through on that with that much detail.
Yeah,
so
because only the Queen can lay the eggs in the later
that's
mythology.
Yeah, the
right?
mythology that they developed down the road.
Um,
You see there's like a lot of that one little deleted scene from this informs a lot of the mythology that they build on the aliens in the second
Yeah.
movie. And just
I wonder
expand
if
on.
that was like when James Cameron came onto the second one, if they were like, oh, by the way, there's this deleted
We got
scene you should check
cool
out.
ideas.
Or if he like already had ideas about.
He was like, I have the idea. It's the
Well-
dollar sign.
Well,
Did you
that
guys
thing
see
is in the second movie. Walter Hill actually wrote like a significant draft, right, for Alien. That's actually famous. Like people reference that screenplay for how it's written. Like just it reads really well. Had like a style that was kind of unique for its time. And Walter Hill is also worked on the screenplay for Aliens, and he's actually credited on that one.
Oh, is he? I didn't see
Yeah,
that.
yeah, he's credited. In fact, I think it's like story by Walter
story
Hill and then screenplay
Because
by
it's
James
got a
Cameron.
lot of, it's very Cameron-y in the way it's written. It's very his style of just like big, enormous chunks of text describing in detail everything that's going on.
Exactly. So my point is that Walter worked on the screenplay, probably said, hey, by the way, we had this great scene we didn't use.
Right.
We should, probably Walter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That makes
Interesting.
sense.
Yeah, 'cause that's the whole genesis. That's the whole thing of the second movie is like, what's the next evolution of these things? Like, okay, so there's eggs. Where do they come from? It's like a really smart direction to go for a sequel.
Oh, totally.
This movie's such a nice layup. It's like
Yeah, they've never been able to take it into a new exciting direction after Aliens. Like they've always been trying to
just
figure
retreading.
Yeah.
Well, I think Prometheus. Ridley Scott tried to even go further with his own thing, and he's like, okay, I don't want to just remake Alien. Let's do something else. And he tried to like play with that a little bit, but I don't know if that was as successful.
But we're not watching Prometheus as part of this series, right?
Right.
Okay.
We can still.
Which ones are you watching again? Oh, the first four?
Just the first four.
Yeah,
You're
no,
still allowed to watch it, Colin.
You can watch whatever you want in your own time.
No, I need to.
But don't bring it into this podcast.
I need permission to watch what I watch.
This is so awesome looking. Did you show the video? No, you don't. Like on YouTube.
No.
Like just the.
No, we don't. But everyone should watch Alien and see how awesome it looks. It really does look cool.
Just imagine something awesome in your head. That's what we're watching.
What I thought was so amazing about this is the DP is a guy named Derek Van Lint, who I want to see if he did anything else because he did like almost nothing else. This is like he basically had a long career in commercials, and I think didn't want to do anything else. Yeah,
He didn't. Who shot Blade Runner? Not him.
Not him. They wanted it, Ridley Scott wanted him to shoot Blade Runner, and he recommended his protege Adrian Biddle, who actually did have more of a film career, but still really didn't do anything better than Blade Runner.
But Adrian Biddle shot Aliens.
I'm
pretty sure.
Maybe. Oh yeah, that's right. He recommended him for the Aliens sequel. Yeah, that's right.
I feel like this is a difficult movie to be the DP of. These are a lot of small, dark rooms.
Yeah.
Also, he was apparently very into VFX stuff. So the only other big thing he did was he was like specifically the VFX DP on X-Men in 2000.
That cat is getting fucking chunked around in that little box.
I was noticing there's a ton of like great camera movement in this movie, and
It's a really
just adding
well-shot
to what you
film.
were saying about how difficult it would be, because I feel like the era wasn't necessarily, I feel like today, just like with editing, we're like now the average shot is 2.5 seconds. Back in the day, it was 5 seconds. Before that, it was 7 seconds, whatever. Same thing with cinematography. It's like you go back and watch your average 70s movie, and it's pretty static. A lot of movies back then, and they used moving camera kind of sparingly. Whereas I was noticing in this movie, they were actually using it a lot in a way that you never notice it, but it's there and it works really well.
And a lot of random handheld that you wouldn't. And I read somewhere that Ridley Scott actually did all the handheld work himself as the camera op, but more handheld than you would think. But it sort of fits the genre. He's doing horror, and that's very a Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of vibe to panic scenes and
It's impressive though. The sets are all so claustrophobic and like so dark. Like it's just
the production design is
super
the sets are
Brilliant.
amazing, just amazing.
I feel like Ridley Scott, much like David Fincher, like has a specific look. Like I could spot a David Fincher movie, like even if I've never seen it, just show me a couple scenes and I'll be like, oh yeah, I can tell that's a David Fincher movie, just the way it looks. And I think Ridley Scott has the same thing. I can always tell it's a Ridley Scott movie. And even though they're shot by different DPs, there's something that he brings that like it must be just like a quality that he likes. Like it's really contrasty or something. Like I don't know exactly what it is, but do you guys feel that?
Well, I've always thought David Fincher reminded me of Ridley Scott in their level of kind of perfectionism, the kinds of movies they make, the darkness that you often see in their movies.
Totally.
And so they remind me a lot of each other, and I feel like maybe David Fincher was even inspired by Ridley Scott. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah.
And definitely, I mean, I don't think they framed their shots in the same way, and I think they use camera movement a lot differently. But I do think that in terms of just like the
I guess
like
I'm
the
talking more about
saturation
lighting.
and exactly. The way they're lit is
Yes.
definitely super similar. And you're right, it's very distinctive because the great directors, it doesn't even matter who they're working with as their DP or what the subject is. They're and even if they're kind of flexible within that, because like if you look at like something like The Martian or Black Hawk Down, obviously those demand a different style than Ridley Scott's normal style, but they still have elements of what he does in everything he does, you know?
Yeah.
It's like same with like Kubrick or, Alfred Hitchcock. They're, they are informing what the visual language is going to be for the movie, and it's going to like meet what they kind of want.
I think it's them Riddle boys.
All right, should we rate this thing?
Oh my God. Yeah.
Rated?
All right. Yeah, we do each we do a little rating. We have a
Timothy Dolphin scale, as you I'm sure are aware.
Yeah, since you're a huge fan of the show, you've listened to every episode. It's a Timothy Dolphin scale from 1 to 10. So we'd like to give a little summary, and then you finish up and you just kind of say, I'd like to give this movie, 6 Timothy Dolphins.
Whole dolphins only, please.
Yeah, whole dolphins only.
So
No.
10 is great, 1 is bad.
Yes.
10 is great, 1 is bad, yeah.
7 is perfect.
I'll go first to kind of give you how it's done.
The numbers mean whatever you want them to mean.
Yeah. So obviously, I mean, like I, said what I said about this movie. I think it's great. I think it's a classic. Watching it today, I was like, God, there's like, I'm not getting any new information. I've seen this movie so many times that like, there's nothing else that I've like never noticed before or whatever. Like, it's just ingrained in my brain so much, and I feel like it's as close to a perfect movie as you can possibly get. Again, going off of what Alex said, like I go back and forth in my mind if I like this movie or the second movie better. But again, I just feel like it's like comparing apples to oranges, and they're two, even though they're the same movie series, they're like two totally different ways of attacking the subject material. And I think they both really do like a great job. And I mean, this movie, to me, is like you could show this to anybody and be like, this is how you make a movie. This is great. So for that, I mean, alone, I have to give this the coveted 10 Timothy Dolphins. Yeah.
Should I go? I'll be quick.
Sure.
All right. Yeah, this is a very good movie. That isn't breaking news. I do think there are a few effects and stuff that don't age well for me, but for the most part, this is, like I said, I've seen this movie the least of any of them, and I actually saw a lot of stuff that I was like, oh, I never noticed that before, and was like kind of really engaged and thought it's in general aged really well. There's some plot holes, there's some, stuff that isn't perfect, but I think this movie's great. I am going to give it 9 Timothy Dolphins. And that may be because I know I'm going to give the next one probably 10, and I want to have somewhere to go. But then also I reserve the right to possibly change this to a 10 as well at the end. So I'm giving it 9 Timothy Dolphins for now.
Wow, plot holes. All right.
Well, we didn't really get into them, but there's a few of them.
Alex, you should go.
I'm a 10. I think it's a great. There's only so many movies that are made ever that touch such a huge.
Yeah, say no more. I agree. I'm on board.
There's a finite amount of movies. I know it's hard to believe sometimes.
I should finish the sentence. That really hit the zeitgeist, like this movie, like we were talking about earlier, that like are still satired, 30, 40 years later, that have huge fan bases. Yeah. That have huge fan bases that have spawned comic books and toys and entire, mythologies that have been expanded upon for years and years, and all sorts of different kinds of media. Like this really captured something. It wasn't just superb filmmaking. It was great storytelling. There was really something special about the mythology of this that has lived on. And so, like, if you can't give this movie a 10, I don't know what movie you can. So I give it a 10. No, Aliens is a 10 as far as I'm concerned, probably a 10 as well. But this is a 10 for me.
So, yeah, this one, this movie's too good. Like, sometimes it's more fun to do. I feel like the listeners might be disappointed when the movie is this good. We just talk about how good the movie is, and like.
Thank God you got your Riddle Boy jokes in there.
Oh, the Riddle Boy
really saved the episode.
Yeah. Well, also, if we don't say the movie's good enough, the Riddle Boys will come for us. And Ridley Scott will be there directing them to be a gang for some reason. You made me lose my train of thought.
There was a train there?
Yeah. Derailed by the Riddle
Train
boys.
has not left the station.
Yeah, it's just when the movie's this good, it's tough to like say a lot of stuff. It's tough to get a discussion because we just keep talking about how great it is. But that's fine with me. It's gonna be a 9 Timothy Dolphins from over here. It's really great. I would recommend it to just about anyone.
We didn't really talk about this last scene before we did our wrap up, but
It needs more projector.
it's worth it. Yeah, exactly. A lot of flickering lights. Not for epileptics. This movie has a lot of strobing.
Right.
But there are a couple of great jump scares, and the one where she's sitting at the control panel and the hand pops up at the end, I knew it was coming. I was like, because I wanted to see how some of these jumps were edited, and I was just like scrubbing through on like the file on my desktop, and literally was watching that moment and still jumped, even though that's specifically why I was stopping to watch it.
I kind of don't understand what's going on with the alien in this last scene. It
Yeah.
seems like he's like sleepy, like he was napping or something, and then she like kind of woke up the alien and like he wasn't fully awake yet, and so she went and hid in the little closet, and then the alien like does become awake. But like is that what's happening? Like, do the aliens even take little naps? Is it stuck behind that thing?
Yeah, did it forget about her?
It was full from eating Yaphet Kodo, and it had to have a nice little Yaphet Kodo nap. It's like after Thanksgiving.
Well, it could also be like stuck in that little cubby. It's
But
like
how did it
trying
get
to work
stuck
its
there?
way
It's
around.
not stuck.
Yeah.
It's not
It's
stuck.
like- It's like I always saw them. They're obviously inspired by bugs. You know, it's like how many times have you been in a room with a spider, and in one moment it's like aware of you, and like it does something towards you. It's aggressive or whatever, and then you move away, and it's like it's forgotten you.
Because they don't have eyes, so we know the way they're sensing us is some sort of
Well-
other sensory.
Well, this is another thing I don't understand about this thing is she turns her back on it and she's singing to herself, and like, why doesn't she just blow it out of the airlock now? Why do we have to have this
she's
moment
baiting
where
it.
She's scared.
I think she's
Oh,
baiting
she's
it.
baiting it to come towards her
Yeah.
to get it in front of the airlock. Okay,
Yeah, that's what I thought.
oh, okay, that makes sense.
Because
I
she
buy
waits
that.
till it gets there and then hits the button.
Yeah. Okay, I buy that. That makes sense. It wasn't immediately clear to me after watching this movie several times, but yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, my best explanation is that like it was sleepy or tired or disoriented in some way.
See, this looks
Yeah,
kinda
that
cheesy.
shot,
And then it becomes aware, and then she becomes aware that she has to like bait it into like getting close to the airlock, and then it senses her, and then it moves into position.
Yeah.
And then she hits the airlock button.
I mean, I like everything that happens. I just am not always clear on why. And honestly, the biggest plot hole in the movie, plot hole, is everything she does after she separates from Yaphet Kodo and what's her name, because she sends them down to get coolant, which apparently she doesn't need because she takes off without it.
Well, they
And
might
I
have
think
needed
they
more
put some of it in.
because they say over and over that this ship can't handle 4 people. It can't handle it's meant for
okay.
only like one person or
But
two.
then she spends all her time like running around after the cat, which seems like just a bad strategic move, and then
But
does the
she cares.
self-destruct thing, and then sees the alien there, and realizes she can't get past it, even though I would
She
probably just
saves the
flamethrower it.
cat,
Yeah,
Harris.
she does save the cat. Yeah, it's just a lot of it's just a lot of people taking the long way to get to something that just seems kind of forced to me.
It's
But
a horror movie.
yeah,
You got to take the long way,
Oh,
or else the
Are
bad
you-
guy can't have an
are-
opportunity to try to kill you.
are you just saying
Sorry.
horror movies can't also be good and make sense? Because this one.
Are you
mostly
saying this
does.
movie's not good and
I
doesn't
think that
make
movies.
sense?
I think that here, I'll go a lot further. I'll say I think that movies in general shouldn't be good or make sense.
It's an bold statement.
Hot take.
Yeah, it explains so much.
All right.
We should all go to the
Alex-
theater and have a miserable experience.
Exactly.
Alex Parslow, thanks for being our guest. Do you have anything that you are working on that you want to plug? This episode's going to come out in about September. Yeah, about a month.
Wow. What's it going to sit on the shelf and collect dust? What do you got to like?
We have to edit out all the racist things that you said.
Horrible, horrible thing. All I can say is please don't ask me back.
Copy that. No, and if you have any like social media things that people
Do you
can
want a
follow you
rabbit
on.
I only
fans
have
to bother
one
you on
social
Twitter.
media thing, and as I explained before the
It's hacked.
podcast, it's been hacked. So I have no social
If you
media.
guys want to follow Alex on Facebook, please don't.
It's Alex Parslow, the Nigerian prince. if he asks you to loan him money, just say yes.
All right, cool. Well, then that's our show. Is there anything else before we sign off?
What does she say at the end?
Yeah,
This
this is Lieutenant Ripley signing off. The last crew
Lieutenant
member of the Nostromo signing off.
off.
And then she farts. Oh, sorry. Am I still recording? Oh, damn. Thank you for listening, and please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you to our guest Alex Parslow, and as always, thank you to Chris Morocco, aka C-Rock, for providing music to the show. If you like this show and want to hear even more exclusive content from us, your boys, then please join our Patreon by going to patreon.com/L2W and subscribe for just $1 measly. Help support the podcast by joining. You get instant access to over 30 shows of us covering non-franchise classics with a new episode every month. Again, that website is www.patreon.com/L2W. License to Watch is a part of the Fandom Limb Podcast Network, so be sure to check out some of their other awesome shows and join us next time for James Cameron's Aliens.